Okay, I have 3 o'clock on the clock, so we'll go ahead and call this budget workshop session to order of the Grayson County Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. Mr. Smith, would you mind leading us in the invitation, please?
Father, thank you for the day it's been given. Thank you for our Board of Supervisors, and we pray that you be with them in this meeting. All we do for us, praise your name. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody received a copy of the agenda ahead of time. This time, Chair would entertain a motion to accept the approve the agenda. Second. Motion for the board with second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chair also aye. Okay. Our first item on the budget work session will be Grayson County Public Schools, PSA and special projects.
Really for the school system, we had 2 items. I think I sent you an email on all those 2 items. I think we made decisions on. Really, it's the, you have it with you.
No, I do not. It's in my head.
Oh, it's in your head. Okay. So we'll go ahead and spit it out there. So.
Sure. It's the request for $375,000 for, I believe, transportation, and the other was the capital improvement investment of $384,000. I mean, $784,000.
Sorry. Everything else, there's no other items in there that are really up for discussion at this point.
Everything else was either required local effort or debt service.
The 375, if you remember, it was bucketed in multiple, and we put it under one line, which was facility. I thought we put it under facility.
It may be facility.
It's under facility.
So the above RLE funding of 375 is the recommendation from staff is to go to 375 all for transportation. Is that what?
Let me pull that up.
Is that what you just said?
No.
Can you pull
Or is this an additional 375?
go to?
So it's our above RLE funding. Okay.
It's above RLE funding. It's
Clear
bucketed in different layers
Yeah.
before, right?
Right.
You want me to bring the computer
I
and get
understand.
set up?
You guys wanted it bucketed. They wanted it in one bucket, so they had some latitude of what they could do with that. So it was on the facility, it was just on the facilities. The capital improvement projects. What I'm assuming is you approve that. Between the 2 groups. Those are 2 items.
Yeah, and that is not for this FY, but 700K is for the future.
25, just 25, unless decisions are made.
Right.
Something happens.
Let's try.
I think that answers my question. The 786 that we put in, or 787, something that we put in last year, and 7 that we agreed with the school board put in this year, are those dollars still sitting there? Okay.
So that's a cumulative fund.
So you're sitting at 1.4 million right now.
I don't know that. I don't know if I can answer that.
And last year and this year together.
Last, if you count this coming 24.
Yes, sir. But fair enough.
This, point was when the ESSER money runs out, that there's a little over $2.2 million sitting there for the school system. Capital improvement.
Now, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 now, we tried to manage the school system budget through categories instead of and I think we all agree that maybe one of the best idea. So if under the other way, which has been the traditional way of just giving them the money, they have the latitude to move it around.
Sure.
put it all in transportation or put it somewhere else.
I thought it was in the facilities bucket, and it's still being allowed to. The CIP money, capital improvement money, it still hadn't come. If there was a discussion about that money earlier in 25, I don't know what the agreement is at this point for the 25. Does it all go to the school and they have complete access to it, or is the agreement that they still need to come back to the board to be on those funds?
So the original discussion, though, I don't think there's a memorandum of understanding, is there? And this was discussed, and there are 4 of us in the living room, so we couldn't put it all together. But in order to access that money, it had to be on the capital improvement plan for the school system. And something could get added by the school board, taken away, and they can prioritize it. But it was for capital improvement, roofs, air conditions. So in my estimation, when the ESSER money runs out in 25, there's not a $2.2 million check that goes to the school.
Okay.
That hasn't been formalized.
Other than last year, that was how the budget was approved.
That's right.
Yeah, here's your part of it. Can you show what it used to look like too as well? You used to have the different buckets. Is it, will that be in 20, you have to show 22 or 22? Click up. Sorry, Tom.
So they want the 375 all in facilities.
That's correct.
Wasn't it specific, what, the 375 on the original ask?
Last year, we broke it up for food, transportation, and there was a bus and a maintenance vehicle they wanted. So there was 3 different categories that we funded off of their list they wanted. They originally wanted like 3 or 4 buses and something else, and we said, okay, we'll do a bus and that maintenance truck.
Which is here.
There was some.
No. Oh, yeah, right. No.
This is last year's
I'm sorry.
request.
That's 23.
But it was, yeah.
Kitchen equipment.
Yeah, here, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's right, so here's your above, Arlie, this is what you're talking about, transportation was 200, maintenance was 45, food services, and so that's, 245, 2, 3, 345, 3, whatever, so we'll get 3.
Should be 373.
375, we're getting it, and we're putting in 1 bucket as far as facilities.
Yes, and facilities. And that was the request.
Correct. And then this year we're doing the same thing. It's just they want it all in transportation, in facilities.
Facilities.
Yes, sir.
And then here's your bucket for capital investment for schools and stuff.
And that's for this year. But how, I guess the thing that I wanted to be clear on, because they have the 7 point whatever million, the whole idea behind that $784K a year for the next 3 years is so that when they come out of that 3-year spending of the federal money, we've got a pretty substantial CIP fund that they can begin to use, ideally only 784 every year, so that, and then we just continue to feed it. So that's the idea. So that money is fenced right now. So the budget request that you have right now for us is 375, all for facilities, and then an additional 784. So that gives you 1.5.
Well, it'll give you this and this. If this is your first year, this is the first year we did this capital investment.
Yes, that was.
So it'll give you 663 and 784 in a bucket. This, the facilities money, is not going into bucket for you to.
No, that's the above hourly fund.
It's above hourly funding that will be effect that they'll get next year. These are the 2 buckets we're talking about for capital investment in 25.
26.
And they do have to come back and ask for that. They can't just get it.
Well, I mean, that's probably some of, like Brandon said, we don't have an MOU of how we're going to do it, but the idea is like we do every year with the CIP. We have certain things that are programmed to spend in that FY, right? So with this plan that we have in place, in 2025 and 2026, they're gonna have 660 and 784 respectively to be able to put against CIP. Could they come and say, hey, we need, in this FY, we need a little more? They can, but then you're pulling away from the following year in order to do the current year. And that's what we're trying to avoid, because the challenge we've always had with the school system is we've never really figured out a way until now to effectively fund a capital improvement program, which we all know they need. And now they have that.
I would argue the same thing for the county, sir.
Maybe so,
Yeah,
but
I would
we,
argue the same thing for the county. That we need to have this exact same thought about how we invest in the county for,
I guess I thought we kind of did that.
not at this level is what I would say,
You mean the amount?
the amount.
Oh, that may be true.
I guess, let me rephrase my question. We're gonna put this money back, but you know how we approve the school budget every year, but then we appropriate it by quarter. And that gets in the consent agenda.
Correct.
So this will be here, but it's gonna have to be, they're gonna have to ask for it, request it still, and we'll appropriate it, even if it's in the consent agenda.
We're appropriating it now. The consent agenda is when we authorize it.
Okay,
All right.
gotcha.
But for the current upcoming FY, all we're going to appropriate and then authorize is to spend,
Above LR. or
which is $375,000.
That number, but Mr. Chair, that number didn't come out of the blue. Historically, the RLE number from the county to the school prior to 2015 was 340 to 380.
Above our.
Above RLE. And so the attempt between our little group that got together was, let's get back to historical figures. Let's don't be at 1.8. Let's be at something we can predict every year, 350 to 380. Make the commitment to continue to put the dollars in there, to take $800,000 off of that ask that was coming every year, because it wasn't necessary. So the 375 that's asked, RLE asked this year, is back to pre-2015 historical data that Grayson County always did RLE. I shouldn't have said always. I don't know how far back it goes, but it went a decade or so. And the additional money that's going into the capital improvement plan is for the county to show their commitment that we're committed to the school, but we're putting some boundaries on it. The only thing we lack is the two staffs getting together and figuring out what are those boundaries. So when you come ask for money out of the capital improvement plan, like my fear is the ESSER money's gone in 2025, and then whatever's come up with, we need $2.2 million. And that wasn't the idea of the capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan, the idea was the windows are bad at freeze. Here's an estimate. And initially we talked about both boards having to approve it. Now maybe that was too much, but I think it's certainly something that both staffs can figure out. But it's supposed to be a fund, an emergency fund for stuff that has to get done.
And so the bigger picture is what they've got right now, because of the federal funding, about $2.5 million every year to do capital improvement. Now they could spend it all in 1 year, they could spread it out over 3 years, however they want to do it. But that number, 2.5, is about $1 million more than what we're doing on an annual basis between above RLE and CIP. So the thought process where they're getting twice as much from the federal to be able to do a lot of these capital things that they need to do over the next couple of years. But now we're able, which bought us that strategic time frame to be able to start funding a CIP ahead of time. So then we get ahead of the ballgame. Is that's the thought process?
Tracking. When, I don't know if you know this or not, they're using the term Esther. Is there Esther money, ARPA money? Is that what it is?
Yes,
Okay.
it's called.
It's basically the
Same
same.
thing. Okay, got it. So When is the last year they get extra money? Any idea?
No,
I think it's similar to the 3-year window we have. I think it's that same time frame they have to have it.
Are they 24 obligated, 26 executed as well? Anybody?
that's our time frame.
That's our time.
I think it's generally the same, but they had, I think, 3 years to spend just like we do. Now, when the particulars, I don't know the answer to when they got it committed.
They do have a different set of rules.
I'll find out. Okay, I heard something, in there that to me was a tasking, which was staff need to get together to come up with either.
How do you access the capital improvement funds?
Check. So either an MOU or a side agreement on how we're gonna access those funds and how the request is gonna come. If there's, and then is that need to be approved by both boards, or do you think that needs to be
I
approved?
think
by-
that's about it. I mean, I think that's a tough ask.
My recommendation is they bring it as part of their normal budget request, and they have a CIP tab just like we do. And that CIP tab for FY 2024, 25, or 25, 26, whatever the first year that money comes available.
Yeah.
You've got, for that year, we can tell you ahead of time, you've got 783,000, or maybe it's 663. Your CIP priority list should come pretty close to that number. Off of that list that they showed us last year that had, I don't know, 25 different items that they wanted to work on. And then we approve it as part of the budget process.
It's kind of like to me, the 6-year road project map. It has to be on the list prior to the year before it can be funded. And I may be saying that wrong, but just all of a sudden say, oh, something came up this year and we need, I mean, that doesn't keep the fund healthy to do it that way. I think.
And it's similar, if you look at our CIP, we've got the out years are on there. We've got stuff programmed that were several years ahead of the upcoming FY.
I think our fund is in the 3s or something like that, low 3s. Is that right? Yeah.
What's that?
It's in our fund is in about the low 3s. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying there's projects listed by FY as well.
Right, right. I get that. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Which I think is a reasonable thought to have as far, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I think it's certainly do those thoughts, do those projects align with the priorities of the county, and they need to be approved. And I think the school board can operate in the same fashion. Okay.
So those first ask could be next year, FY 25, but
it should be the following.
3 years of investment. So this is year 2.
I thought
It
you
should be
said-
25, 26, and then it's the
FY
first year
26.
for that product.
So it'd be 26, well, next year is FY 25 for all
Yes.
intents and purposes, so it'd be 26,
FY 26.
FY 26. And it'll be $663,000, because that was the first year we put in.
Correct.
And the only question I have is, why did we go from 663 to 784? Was there?
My recollection, my notes were, maybe Lisa knows, but you do.
You go ahead. I think we're on the same page. Go ahead.
I don't think we are. So you go first.
Okay. I think it's because we had what was above RLA, what became the new normal before the 375,000. That difference is where this number came from. So last year they asked for this much here. So the difference was the 600, so it's about 1.2. That's this number here as well.
I remember it differently.
Okay, then
So
The ask.
that's why we're having a work.
The ask was 1.8 last year.
1.8.
And we agreed that the county put $600,000 towards the
Yes,
field.
that's where this is coming from.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then, well, it may not have been 1.8, but that 663 was, I mean, I remember this conversation.
Mhm.
We'll give you your ask, but above RLE goes down to this.
Mhm.
You put the roof on the Cade Center. We'll give $600,000 for the school, and whatever was left of that ask, that goes into
Which,
capital improvement
yes,
fund.
you're adding more detail. I was generalize.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
So that 600K, it was a one-time deal because that allowed them to use.
I'm not talking about the 600, I'm talking about the 663.
The 600K.
No, yeah.
That was a one-time deal.
So if you had the 663, the 600, the 127, the 45, the 200, that would get you up to what the ask from the school board was last year. And it's not 1.2, it's
66, 1.2, 1.4.
Close to
1.6. It's about 1.5, isn't it?
So that 600K allowed, they were gonna use some of the extra money for the field. And what we negotiated was, you use extra money to fix the roof on the K Center, because that's what you need to do. We'll give up the 600K for the field in exchange for the multi-use, the use agreement that we have for the rec department to use their facilities. All right, which includes this field that they're building. That was a one-time deal, you know, and so that's gone. So now we're back to above RLE and then future CIP fund.
Got it. Good.
Now,
And this is the number we're talking about programming for future CIP.
yeah, so, but then how do we pay for it in the out years, right? So, you know, after I know I missed the last budget meeting, but the one before when we were talking about the vehicle tax. All right. I thought about that, and if the original intent was behind that tax when they put it in place was to fund school buses, and school buses are a capital expense, then why not return? And I know we talked about getting rid of that tax, and it's about 400K or something like that. But rather than the idea is, rather than take that revenue source away, we actually return it to the purpose that it was originally intended for, which was to fund capital improvement for the school. I'm sure that probably helps you all balance the budget numbers a little bit better, but the thought is that if that revenue source had a purpose at one time, not the general fund, and it got changed at some point. And so the thought I had was, well, that would fund every year almost half of that CIP requirement for the school in the out years. That was my thought I had.
I mean, you could clean this up really easy, so it's easy to understand that the county commits $1 million every year to the school. 350 to RLE, 650 goes to the improvement fund, wherever that money comes from. But what I'm hearing is the county also needs to have that kind of commitment that there are some funds put away for rainy day. And whether you use the vehicle tax or, it's going to be a tax that is done in the county. Maybe we do need to have a dedication. I mean, for 7 years, we put 1.5 to 1.8 into Grayson County school system. We've kind of put some fences on that now. Whatever we used to dedicate to the schools above and beyond the $1 million, we should dedicate to the county capital. We're not moving money around. We've been spending it historically that way. Either way, we put some definition on it, and then we're just spending it the same rate, just it's going to more dedicated projects.
Yeah, I think having a dedicated funding line for county CIP is good. I guess I'm just looking at purely on the revenue side. What we discussed last time was reducing revenue by about 400K by eliminating that revenue line. And my thought is, if we're going to dedicate a certain amount of funding for the school, and we just heard we need to probably up our funding for the CIP for the county, that revenue's got to come from somewhere. And whether it's, I mean, you can clean up the language and the labeling. It's really about, do we have enough revenue generation to do what we think needs to be done for the county?
It was my understanding that if if you eliminated, based off of what Larry was telling us, that if you kept the rate at 0.25 and you did away with the vehicle tax or I forget what's called, there was still unexpected revenue above and beyond what we had historically gotten because vehicles hadn't come down that much. I don't know if at least Mike could pull that up and refresh me, and I may be going down a rabbit hole here, but even if this year, if you did away with the vehicle tax and left the rate at 0.25, there was still above average revenue that was being generated by doing that. So you're giving up $400,000 in revenue, but you're not.
From that funding line, but you're saying.
But it's being generated on the point.
Because of the value of the asset that you're taxing.
If I remember correctly.
Is that trend gonna hold true though? You know,
That's the thing.
I had kind of another idea for the vehicle fees was maybe dedicate it to the fire and rescue, where we're saying, you know, we're gonna try to buy apparatus for the fire departments, ambulances and stuff. You know, I don't know how people, if they know it's going toward public safety or school. I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big bill that's coming due.
I can tell you, you know,
I certainly think that identifying the location of that fund is an important talking point for that particular fund. Because I don't like the idea of this rolled over to a general revenue fund and then nobody actually knows where that money's going to. I think that's a really good, it's an important point for us to be able to articulate to the citizens. If you're gonna pay this, this is how it's gonna be used for this particular thing. I think that's what, I didn't remember what you just said, so I'm missing something. If you're telling me that Larry was saying that reducing that 410,000 doesn't really affect our overall budget, I missed. I completely that went over my head. Did you get that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I missed that.
I think what he was saying is that although the used car values have come down
35% or something,
so they're still higher
Yeah.
than they were in 2020.
So their revenue from personal property tax, 300,000.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on the number, but my recollection is about $300,000 more than what you typically get in a year. Will it hold? Probably not. I mean, I think we've gone through a strange time. Then you get rid of the $400,000 from the tax, then you're looking at about $100,000 in that scenario. But
I think I owe you those numbers. If that's a discussion.
well, they were up in front of us, you know, and I'm just going off of memory, Steve. So I'm sorry if
Oh, no, it's
I'm
okay.
taking us down the wrong path.
No, it's okay. I think it's important. I do think with as we're coming out of COVID, particularly China, as China's coming out of COVID, that a lot of our supply chain issues will clear up in the next year. Whether we'll see that effect on cars either this year or 24, later in 24, maybe third quarter 24 is probably the question I can answer. But I certainly see China starting to pivot and things changing, at least from a customs, legacy customs point of view. We're seeing more and more things being floated in and out of the country. So I don't know the answer to the car question. Particularly with chips, I don't know the answer to that.
Strategically, I have no clue on this. It seems to me that as a tax-paying citizen, I get a tax bill and you've eliminated one tax. You only have one thing to play around with every year, and that's at 0.25. And that can be easily manipulated each year as you try to maintain your revenue.
Yeah.
And so if we do away with the vehicle tax and it gets rid of $400,000 in revenue, and we change the rate to a 2.6 or a 2.65 or something like that to keep the revenue the same, I think it would be nice and I could be wrong on this, but when you get your tax bill and you open it, you got your personal property tax and then your vehicle fee. If the vehicle fee's gone and you manipulate that number based off of your rate, to me, that seems a little easier to swallow. I might be wrong.
My take is 20% of the population of Grayson County is not landowners. They've got to be able to put a little money in the skin in the game as far as fire rescue, sheriff's department. Let's go, I want to weigh those folks, I'm not down in those, I want to weigh those folks to put skin in the game is $35 sticker fee, whatever you want to call it, plus whatever they pay on their vehicles. It's not fair for the real estate people to pay for everything. It's the only way that you're putting any skin in the game.
You're saying the only way that non-property owners, citizens of Grayson County, but non-property owners, that's how they're contributing.
I think the property owners are paying 80% of the property owners are property owners. They're paying the bills. 20% is not. The only way they're paying anything is a $25 sticker tax on the value of a vehicle.
If they pay the vehicle tax, the registration tax, that means they have a vehicle. My only point is that you capture the value of that vehicle tax within your rate of your personal property. So you do away with the tax, but you manipulate the rate in which personal property tax is taxed so they would still be paying their part. It's just the one variable that you'd be using would be the rate at which personal property tax is taxed.
So you take away the $25 fee that you added to the value of the vehicle.
That's the one number you can manipulate.
One thing you have to think about doing that. People drive nicer cars. Higher rate.
Any way to make this equitable for everybody, I'm sorry. There's people
Well,
that have,
$25.
and there's people that have.
$25 a week for them. But the people that drive nicer cars, all of a sudden they're paying higher than the people that drive a nicer car. They're gonna like this idea.
Well, it's a,
Because it's people that
well,
have
it's that
nicer
25
cars
bucks
that-
is being added to everybody.
Yeah,
So there are,
so
everybody's
that's
paying.
equal to everybody.
So it's there, well, but even under what Brandon's saying is, if you adjust the personal property fee to account for that $25 per person, so whatever the $225 becomes in order to make up that, so maybe it's $227. Then what you're effectively not changing anything, because you're still generating the same revenue that you would have if you'd have done $225 plus $25. Does that make sense? Do I have that right?
I'm just saying the people that have, if you're driving a $50,000 value car, you're paying $225 on it. Then your $220, $230, $240 is gonna be a lot higher on 50 than it is on a $5,000 car.
Yeah, but, I mean, Metro, it's still, you take the $25 for everybody away, it's still not gonna be an equal tax. I mean, and I don't think it's our job to make it equal for everybody, because it's not equal for everybody.
I'm just saying it right now.
My only point is, you get a personal property tax and there's two taxes on there. One is personal property tax and one is a vehicle tax fee. You have the opportunity to take the vehicle tax fee away, create the same amount of revenue with one line item. Personal property.
Just simplifies.
Just simplify it. And as a citizen, you're only looking at one tax, even though they're both being captured.
I agree with that.
They're both being captured right there.
I agree
And we could say, you know, that 10 cents of that, or 0.1 of that 0.25 goes to, you know, put your fence around it, wherever you want to put it. County capital improvement plan.
But I think Mike's point's valid. I mean, we have communication equipment issues, whether it's 911 or the other parts of the communication effort that we've got the revenue's got to come from somewhere to pay for all that. I don't know what the latest proposal is on it. Do you have one yet? On the,
I think must be in discussion.
well, so we don't need to get into that, but I'm okay with the idea of simplifying the billing process. If the revenue that we're talking about stays the same. Does that make? I'm all on board with simplifying the taxing process. But I think what we're saying is that we're keeping that overall revenue goal.
If I may,
You may.
and I think Mr. Porter's gonna get into this in a little bit, but, losing that 410,000 makes a difference in our expenditure budget. We're to the point, we're not squirreling away enough to just stop saving. We're to the point, what service is coming next? What service do we need to alter?
But aren't we coalescing around the idea of not getting rid of the 410? It's just simplifying how we collect it.
And I apologize for kind of missing out on some of what you guys have to say. If we don't, my point is, if we don't have the 410,000, wherever it comes from, it's going to affect our services. We're to that point.
We don't have any capital improvement, if I remember correctly. We don't have any capital improvement in this budget at this point.
Correct.
Very little, if any, for the county.
I don't think there's any in there.
There's not.
There's not.
There's
I think so.
Not to balance it to where we're at. There's no capital improvement in there.
So what we were doing last year, I think we did 500K or something like that roughly. You've had to take that in order to balance the budget and the loss of the.
And the balance, we're using the 600 from the gaming. To balance the budget as well.
Do we know what that number is?
We're estimating that to be 600,000.
Okay.
It could be more,
Okay.
but we feel like that's a more safe estimate.
Okay.
And I'll just remind, I know we're going this far today, but it's fine. It's actually a good discussion. Just a reminder on our financial forecast. Everybody has a copy of the financial forecast, what it looks like in the out years. It's a little interesting for us. The forecast is to raise.
Start, might be a better word.
Yes, sir. For the start. And I'm glad we're having this discussion. Then I wrote down just some notes. The initial budget review reflected the elimination of vesting. I got where we're headed to just simplify this. If we're going to simplify this, I don't know that I'm opposed to that. It does take away, unless we somehow notate in there that a certain percentage of that is going for a specific, or rolling off for a specific thing. I think we can do that. I don't know exactly what that rate is because I wasn't thinking about this discussion right now. We had no original discussions, no new increase in any taxes. We had no new increases in any taxes. That means a flat budget. Flat budget for my mind is declining based on inflation, the cost of things and goods. It's a declining budget. There's no CIP investment in the county in this budget so far. We're using 600, I believe, bring me from 600 of ARPA for ambulance and fire truck. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep. There's a request for 2 EMS positions that we discussed. Estimated state salary adjustment was 5%. There's no change to short-term, long-term disability to all our employees. No change in that. We're not addressing some of the health care costs, insurance costs for the families on health plans. Has anybody talked to you about that issue yet? Do you understand the cost of health care for employees? Yeah. If you've got a family, look in my stupid brain, we are de-incentivizing families to work for the county right now. If you work for Public Works and you have a spouse and 2 children, it's $1,100 or $1,200
Right at 12.
$1,200 a month for your healthcare costs. It's pretty significant.
That's for the whole family.
That's for the whole family. It's the whole family. We've had some issues with people wanting to work for the county that just can't get around that cost. It's significant cost for them. CIP for school, 784, we talked about that. The potential infrastructure investment you can offer is focused on police, fire, comms, and broadband. So we did have some additional costs for administration costs. I think we can scale those, right? Or
Some we can, some are scalable.
we were going to contract out some work to have a personnel handbook,
Have it
And
updated.
have that updated, and a compensation study. Now, can we scale that? We certainly can. We can back off some of those funds. And then my intention is to, say this, but I'm going to spend some money on the website this year, 24, so we can set up the website. And I'm going to take that internally. I'm just going to shift some money into some things we were doing in the past. We're not going to do it in the past. We're going to do this for the future. Doesn't affect your decision.
But if the revenue remains, the revenue that we currently have on the books last year, meaning you don't remove the vehicle tax, you just simplify the code, okay? We actually have an increase in revenue by about $600K as it's planned right now, right? Do I have that about right?
That is about right, yes, sir.
So,
Well, not
so
on taxes, not on county taxes.
Huh?
Not on taxes.
now the county tax would remain flat, the levy for the real estate's the same, 2.25 for vehicle, personal property. $25, whether you keep that or you move it into the personal property, so that overall personal property pool is the same. So the only new revenue that we're seeing that is somewhat predictable is the 600K. That's right. Now we do have, when we say we're not funding, maybe this is what you were leading to earlier in your comment, but the last year, this year, next year, we do have the ARPA money. So that's CIP money that is available. May not be as much as you want. It's 1.1, 1.2, or whatever, about 1.2 of the 3 point whatever is being committed. Is that right?
Yes, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah,
in a little bit.
So right now, it seems like, at least where my head is that simplifying the personal property thing would be a goal, but maintaining the same level of revenue is what we're after. Is that?
And I'm good with simplifying. But the talk was to start with, was do away with it in $410,000, and we have to have it.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of getting rid of the revenue.
But that was the talk to start with.
That was when we.
Well, because my recollection, and I could be. Can you go to personal property tax?
Can we pull it up? Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just make me feel better.
No problem.
There was an additional $300,000 being generated because of the vehicle, personal property value.
And I'm with you, Mr. Brent. I'm with you, Mr. Ivy.
You mean in your agreement that there's
I see, I'm following his train of thought.
That's scary.
Fortunately, she's retired.
Okay. All right, and I think what you're talking about is here. Last year,
With the increase, we were looking at, now this is of course before the refund, okay? We were looking at about $4 million in personal property tax
Versus 3.
versus the $3 million. So that is a little bit of what you're talking about. That refund took this way down, took that down to what would have been equal to about FY 22. And I'll have to go back to the budget on it.
well, it's not giving it to me, because of the newness of the system.
And how treasurer's office tracks things differently, so.
So
It's
the
number
3.6 that you have in there for this year,
Yes.
that we're talking about, it's $500,000 more than the actual FY 22. And that's because of the increased value in vehicles, correct?
Yes, yes, yes.
And so my point was, you do away with the 400,000, you're still getting $500,000 more than you were planning on getting. So Mr. Anderson, I mean, he wants to get rid of the vehicle tax.
Okay. I'm trying to track all these
Can I
things.
pull up?
Yeah.
He's looking at this number right here.
So that's
So
actual
22.
22.
22, there was 3-1.
Yep. And here's 3.6.
I'm just gonna look like about 3.8 with all the other pieces to it.
So the actual to here, you take the vehicle tax out of it, you subtract $400,000, you're still sitting there with that money. So if you do away with the vehicle property tax and you keep it at 0.25 or whatever that rate is, you're still generating more revenue than we did in FY 22. And then the only trigger we get to play with is you can change the 0.25 to 0.27 and you're still generating the historical number or above by playing with the rate of personal property tax instead of, I probably wasted everybody's time, but by looking at it and you don't have a vehicle tax anymore, that's just that's a trigger that everybody says, when you're going to do away with the damn vehicle tax. And it does level the playing field because everybody has to pay $25. It doesn't matter if you drive $1,000 truck or $100,000 truck. We can't make that equal, and nor should we try to. But you can recapture that $25 vehicle tax. It's not going to be fair, but you can recapture it in that rate that we tax personal property. That's small.
I see where you're at.
So when we did the refund, and we reduced that by, I don't know how much.
We brought that number right back down.
So it went from 4.1 to 3.1. So we refunded $1 million.
I don't have the exact
Well,
refund
that's
amount.
close.
That was the goal, is to
30-something
keep
percent.
it equal.
Yeah. So then,
Because we were caught off guard because of
No,
vehicles.
no, I got it. Where I'm at though is you're coming back with a number right now of 3.8. And
All
so,
inclusive, yes. All
and that is that's a $700,000 increase from FY 22.
That's where I came up.
After-
300,000.
After we eliminate, and that 3.8 is after we took out the vehicle
Right.
tax rate
Yep.
of $25.
Yep.
So, and we have potential 600,000 from, so maybe we need to understand better than why is it, if we got more personal property money coming in and we were able to survive this FY,
Well, we're not funding EDP.
what?
We're not funding EDP. EDA, sorry, EDA. from the EDA out of this year's budget. That was,
Why?
I think it was based on the numbers we had. I don't, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at the revenue, the only real revenue line that's changed is personal property, and it's gone up by $700,000 from what we ended up with as a revenue line from last year. Plus we've got another $600K from the potential from the casino. So why is it then, if you're hitting,
Yeah, I got you.
how is it that we're
Our expenses are
struggling?
growing, our revenues are not.
His point is this. He's telling, what he's saying is you got 1.76, 1.3 in his brain, which is true. We got 1.3 additional revenue.
Your raises, expenses.
You got a 5% raise.
Inflation.
You're asking me for particular numbers right now.
That's offset that.
Not particular numbers, just rationale, just,
Got it.
you know,
I got it. I'd have to give you numbers on what the cost of a raise in benefits, what that is, what that costs the county of 100 employees, what the cost of adding 2 new positions is. That's $100,000 or whatever that is. What the cost of,
Expenses, inflation.
you know, well, I don't know. I don't have those particular numbers.
Yeah.
I need those. particular numbers.
Well, I mean, costs are going up.
Yeah.
And they're always gonna go up, and I think last year was an exceptional year with the vehicles, but I certainly don't have a brain to figure out what's going on with it. I mean, prices go up every year. And we went down on the levy last year.
yeah, but the values went up. Same argument you're making on the personal property.
I get that, but we had a plan to step up in taxes prior to last year, and I don't know if by us moving it back impacted that plan other than last year. I mean, we're gonna have to go up on tax rate with the cost of increases.
I'm with you on the idea of the not messing with the revenue source. It's just, but to your line of argument, when you have a revenue increase from last
Yep.
year after then, so that the justification, so what is all that that's making it challenging? And I think that the real homework is, what does that personal property number look like if you roll the personal property or the vehicle tax into the personal? What does that rate become? 2.26.
That's a simple math equation. You take $400,000.
Right, but I'm just saying that's what you're asking. That's what I think we're asking is that what does that look like? Because we got to make a decision here by the end of this month in order to notify if we're going to have an adjust in the levy. And so if we're going to adjust the personal property up to 2.26 or whatever that number is, then or some other levy adjustment, then we've got to make that decision.
So looking at this, the personal property 0.25 that it's taxed at. If you don't change it at all, you're gonna get an additional $300,000 in revenue.
I'm tracking, Brantley.
Even getting rid of the vehicle tax.
I'm tracking all that, but we still got, based on all the expenses increase that we've just been talking about, we've still got basically a $400,000 gap that we've created because of the increase in expenses, not necessarily because of the cut in revenue. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out is how do we close that gap? I mean, that's what we're all trying to figure out. All right, that's good news.
Very good discussion.
With this discussion on this personal property levy, this is for the simple minded here. We got in, people were in an uproar on these values and stuff. We upped the levy to adjust next year and stuff. people come, get irate over that too. I mean, because we look at
You're making a good point. I will remind you that we don't know what these values are gonna be.
For next year.
Because we have to wait till January. Yeah, so we don't know when those are gonna be. Are they gonna continue to go down? Will they stabilize or decrease another 10%?
And I guess, and another way to look at it, just to bounce around this simple mind, if, they do get out of hand again, we can control it with that lady.
What, I guess the point I'm trying to make is whether your vehicle tax is there or not, whether or not it's earmarked to buy school buses, which was good intention a long time ago. If you get rid of the vehicle tax this year, you're still gonna have additional revenue that you weren't planning on anyway, to $200,000-300,000. And if next year the vehicles become worthless because you can't have anything except electric vehicles, then you just have to address it next year. I mean, without a crystal ball, you could leave the vehicle tax in there. I'm hearing loud and clear that for 2 years in a row that we want to get rid of the vehicle tax. I don't know if there's ever been a better time to do it than right now.
I'm not opposed to the getting rid of it. It's purely about the revenue and the expenses that he's laid out. We know we've got some significant capital improvement stuff we've got to do specifically on the vertical asset side, in addition to the equipment for 911. And that's just one component of capital improvement. And so how do we, with the increase in expenses across the board, many of them mandated, unfunded mandates, how do we make up that gap? That's, even though we have a $300,000 increase in personal property based purely on vehicle value, how do we make up that gap? Because is that gap purely $400,000, or is it, if you do away with you got the 300,000 increase in personal property, and you got 600,000 coming from, and we know we got CIP money basically from ARPA for the next couple of years. Do we, for our current operating,
right.
where are we short? How much revenue are we short?
It'd be 0.26. That's what you'd have to raise the levy to regain that additional 400,000.
Right.
So that would change the levy from 0.25 to 0.26. Those are just raw numbers, but according to the revenue that we generated, 0.25, $3.8 million, that's about $15,300,000 worth of value of personal property in the county. And if you need to regain that $400,000 for operational purposes, you move up 0.26 instead of 0.25. It'll get you that additional $400,000.
Right.
So just to put it in perspective of what we're talking about
I'm
here.
totally with you. Totally with you. But that is an increase in levy, which means then we've got to advertise it. I mean, along with the budget and all that stuff. If that's what we want to do, that's what.
So the way you frame that up is we're getting rid of the vehicle tax. We're going to go up from 125 to 126. And this may be the year that, may not be the year to do it, I don't know. But we went through a bad year last year. We did everything we could as a county to refund everybody as much as we possibly could to get it back. At some point, we've got to get back to living, and here we are. And we're only going to go up 125. So you're talking about 100th. 1/100 of raise on the levy, and that's easy to swallow. Maybe not for everybody, but it's not that. Gosh, please double check on that. But if you don't do anything this year, you're still looking at a
300 plus 60.
Yeah, so I'm in the camp of, if we don't need to do it, we don't need to raise it, but I think we do need to understand, maybe this is the rest of the discussion we're going to have about capital improvements, where you see the expenses going that we need to address, because we need to really understand that before we can make a decision. We need to increase the personal property insurance.
Okay.
Good.
One thing that I think we're kind of glancing over, and I think we'll be reminded when we start working on the capital improvement piece of the conversation. Last year, we took out a lot of operating expense, used ARPA as a crutch for that last year. $150,000 from police vehicles alone. A lot of operating expenses were supported by ARPA. So we got used to that really fast. Looking at that bottom line. That was the danger of using that numbers and not. Exactly. We subsidized. Because we couldn't. I think we've kind of forgotten that piece of it too.
Just like what we're doing with the school system to prepare them for when the money is turned off, we need to be looking inward on that as well.
Exactly.
I mean, there's only a few triggers we have to pull. It's levy on real estate, levy on personal property tax, trash fee. I mean, there's only a few things that we really have any control over. But jerking down the levy last year on real estate taxes, I mean, I don't think we could be in a better position because we had everything revalued in a year when everything was just stupid high. And you go up 1% on the levy when we went down, we go down 3%, 4%. Last year, did we go
From 58 to 54.
So we went 4%.
4 cents.
I mean, 4%. Well, still 4%. Anyway, you regain those 4% back over the next 4 years, and we get reassessed or revalued every 6 years. And so if we take that into account, that we've got some operational things we need to cover for. I mean, you go up from 0.25 to 0.26, and you go from 54 to 55, and that's the plan over the next 6 years.
Well, that was what you're describing is basically what a version of what the levy increase was over 5 years. You know, and we did, you know, the real estate assessment last year was a reset of that because it invalidated the financial forecast that we used for that plan going forward. And in that plan, we just, you know, said opinion this increase is going to be, now this was just the increase, not the total number, but in that plan, you know, I think we were at 49, we were going to 61 or 62, I think. And we laid out a penny's going to be for broadband, 2 cents, I think, or 3 cents were going to be public schools. We had, you know, and there was about 5 different things that we laid out. But we did another financial forecast, I think it was 2 years ago, that lays out that same justification using historical data and trying to forecast as best they could what that levy increase would look like over time, over 5 years. So that's what you're describing is a levy adjustment over a period of time. The thing that was hard, because we went about 11 years without doing any sort of levy adjustment, that first year we went up, what was it, 7 cents or something like that on the real estate levy, and we jumped like 50 cents on the personal property. So that was a pretty major shock. But after that, it was 2 cents, I think 1 cent. We never finished that because the real estate assessment came in and it was freaking sky high.
But that, to me, that's the one given that we have that we can work with looking into the next few years, not just this upcoming budget, is we had a reassessment that is good for 6 years. And that value of the real estate in this county will not change until it's reassessed. It's likely going to go down. So I think we need to be mindful. We know we have at least that for the next 5 years.
That's the predictable levy revenue that the county has, is that real estate. Because it's set unless we play with the levy. But if we don't play with the levy, the values have changed.
I guess my point is we'd be missing an opportunity not to play with the levy. Incremental increases are just easier to swallow.
The financial forecast actually lifted for a year or two at what we're at 54, but then it takes up toward the end of it. They have their recommendation, huge jump. That makes more sense because I can tell you and being here that 1 or 2 cents, I've heard that a lot. Why can't we do it 1 or 2 cents at a time instead of 5 or 6?
That's right. And we've got that.
That's what we screwed up with the 11-year deal, where we didn't have that incremental thing, and then we had to do that thing. We don't want to do that.
I mean, just having that forecast, which I don't believe it's worth the paper it's written on. Forecast outside 90 days is almost useless. If we know we're gonna have that total real estate value until the next time we come in here and value all the homes, that's what our planning discussion should be around. And all of these big ticket items that we know that we're gonna have to cover. I mean, fire and rescue absolutely is one of the most important. Schools, one of the most important. Putting a fence around every one of these things, dedicating some dollars. You can look at it that in the next 5 years, we've got the opportunity to start stuffing away in a fund for when real estate prices go back down. I mean, it was almost a gift to this county that it just happened to fall on the COVID year that we got to be set.
The 4 cents we went down to like $700,000.
Yeah, didn't you say it's like
It's $195,000.
$195,000, $200,000 a person? I see. Yeah, I'll be quiet.
Okay, anything else? Or we want?
So we help you know.
I think, I didn't know we were heading down this road today, so I'm sorry, I apologize. So what I've heard is this, is we want to continue to plan for the reduction in the vehicle sticker tax. Understand that. We'd like some more fidelity on where that 300 goes, 300 plus the 600, where that's going to be allocated to this next year, whether it's salaries and expenses, health and benefits. And what other costs that are increasing, so you can understand where that 900,000. If we decide, you kind of want to see the numbers on it, if we go to 2.26 on public personal property tax, where that would take us to. You know, see where that goes. But we know what that looks like. It's not 3.8, it's what it actually looks like. So other things that you want us to have ready.
What was the total increase in the budget dollar-wise from last year?
From last year to this year, yeah.
Shit.
I got it.
Stephen, I'm wondering if, one way to help paint the picture a little better is just, that list you just ran down.
Yeah.
With all that, there's, if you rack and stack, and we've made this comment to the school board, right, several times about, you're above the line and below the line. And if you assume that you've got the 900K increase this year and that's it, what is it that we're not going to have funds to fund?
Sure.
And then if we do the 2.26 or some version of a levy adjustment, what does that allow us to do?
Got it.
It may be a way to articulate it, at least in my mind, on where the challenges lie.
Okay, if we are going to do any kind of new change, I was just looking here at the, we'll have to advertise by May 17th. Is that still correct date? What I had was notifying the holder of a public hearing on the FY 23-24 budget, and needed to be advertised by the 17th.
That's $2.25 per hundred.
And somebody asked what's the difference in expenditures from,
No, I think you, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. Did you ask expenditure?
somebody asked what's the difference in this year's expenditures from last year's? Currently, as we have it, $151,000.
That's the
Increase
increase in operational budget.
Because we don't have investments in
So that's before any investments, that's purely just to survive and trade water.
Yes.
That's no capital, CIP.
No CIP, no
No.
EDA.
No EDA, no increase in benefit, well, that includes the projected 5% from the state,
CPI and EDA.
that's it.
So those are your below the line items right there.
Now, it does include the 2 cents for broadband. Now, we could back that off and let that sit for a year. But I think that's just balancing the budget. I don't think that's progress.
We took out the, let's see what else I'm trying to think of. We moved around, we left in the 2 positions for EMS. We took out we still haven't landed on incentives. So I know you had some questions about that, it's called the health screening. We removed that for now. Anything else in there that
Did every request that's been in front of the board so far, is it in the budget?
No.
Like, for example, the rec department, $50,000 slide.
No, it's
is that in it?
no. Not everything. We've skinned some of the stuff out of there already. So we'll get requests all the time from different groups who want different money, and I've skinned those down. I don't know all of them yet because we haven't finalized this yet, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
So are there any other personnel adjustments you're making, assuming, you just said 2 for EMS? Any other personnel adjustments that are gonna be permanent increases to the budget?
We're just backfilling our GIS, our IT person with $30.
Those are already existing,
Are
right?
existing, those are not new positions. There's no additional.
2 part-times,
Oh, that's right.
2 half-times,
2 half-times, 1 for water.
1 for water, 1 for planning.
Yeah, so 2 part-time positions.
The increase,
No benefits, just salary.
Yeah,
the
just
increase in minimum wage, it's still figured in. So it'll go up again next year, right?
I'm not sure that we have another one scheduled. Let me Google that real quick. I think we're at 12 for a little while.
Again next year.
And backfilling Lisa's position, but there's no new increase in positions. I think we pull up the rec department's flat. I think there's maybe a 0.1% in there. The sheriff's department had a little increase. I'm trying to think of another department that has any significant increases. I can't think of it.
So about DSS or regional jail.
Minimum wage doesn't increase again in Virginia until 26.
6.
So we
What
have
is
a little bit of, it's $12.
What's it going to be? 13?
15 to
15?
26.
Oh, 115. Lord, I thought there was
Minimum wage 150.
In 2026, January 1 of 2026.
Thinking about stepping stuff up. I mean, should we just begin to think about doing that? I mean, that's 3 years to get to $3, so if you did $1 a year.
We're making more of our own. I'll take that job.
That's why your salary, so you just,
Only if you work 40 hours.
Only for it. Okay. Yeah, 2.5, not 2.25. Do you want to look at the, I don't want to push you on to something else, but you want to look at the capital improvement project list that we have? You ready to look? Oh, should we do the water first? Let's do the water.
So easier. Let's do that.
Yeah.
It's on paper. I guess don't mind going backwards just a little bit. Very small change on water. Look at the requested column, which is about column 4. You'll see 359,000 over 311,000 for fiscal year 23 for the appropriation, and the addition there is for 1 half-time water technician, water quality engineer, and then the other is addition of $25,000 in professional services for
That's mandated.
a mandated study in lead and copper throughout the county.
what's the part-time position? We haven't had it before, what's driving the need? You know, we don't run a water plant, we just have accounts. So what's driving the need for a part-time person?
We're actually taking our current PSA and we're splitting him between the building department. We used to have a half-time position in the building department. We don't have now, but we're taking this position and splitting him between building and PSA. And the amount of work that is being asked of him, he can't keep up with it. A lot of overtime, a lot of compensation time that we're having to do.
What I think what's driving is, what is the actual duties of the water technician?
He's doing it all, he's reading the meters, and, he's going out and getting water sample 3 times a week. And he's doing the repair work,
So who are the salaries above that line?
and he's putting the meters in, he's any new meters.
That's the part-time person?
No, that's the PSA guy that is splitting duties and also in the, building.
So are you moving him to maintenance full-time?
And on our maintenance people, we'll send them with him to help out. When he has to do a install of a meter or a repair, because we got to have more than one personnel on the road to do that.
I think the age of the water system is coming into play as well. There's a little bit more, and the data is still being collected on that, so they have a data
The
system.
age?
The age of the water system. And Fairview is a little older than the other water systems.
It was put in the 90s. So when you hit that 30-year mark, you start to have some issues. 25, 30-year mark, and we're starting to see some leaks and burst, pipes bursting, whatever. But, we
Is it
didn't
cheaper to hire that part-time
Yeah.
person or have it contracted out? I mean, it's a part-time job, but if it's just reading meters, do we really need that person to be
It's
accounting
It's
for?
a half-time position. I think if you contract it out, it might be about the same.
No benefit.
Okay.
Part-time's no benefits, so.
Guess it depends on the
Part-time
hours, part-time.
Yeah, no benefits.
But part-time's no benefits, so.
It depends on
They go over 30 hours.
the hours. This is just based on 24 hours.
24 hours, so.
We're doing 24.
Yeah.
So we don't be close to that threshold. Having to do that. was using, which used to be our PSA guy, Mr. Smith, that's just basically helping us very minimal now. So we basically in an emergency case, so we
So
basically
does
lost
that,
our-
if that position, if he's no longer, does this person replace him?
we had
In
to-
essence, yes.
But
He's,
you're asking for a new position, but in effect, it sounds like we're replacing somebody that's already on the books.
yes, for $5,000. So we're adding enough to make that an actual 3-day a week position.
You think it's full day?
Are y'all looking for an okay? Is that what?
Just consensus, if there's any discussion points or anything like that.
Technology's out there for the power company, when they read a meter from a desk, that they can read water meters too. But there would be expense changing meters out. I don't know what that is now, but
we read them from the car now, we don't have to actually get out like we used to. We don't have to get out.
well, maybe I need to do that.
We have a water system, but we really don't run a water system, you know? And so to add more people for a system that we're not actually running, it's hard for me to swallow, even though it's a part-time person.
Well, when it comes through J lights, it comes through Troutdale, when it comes through that line, all they do is meter how many gallons. The responsibility is ours.
I understand, but we don't have a water plant, one.
No,
We got lines of meters.
there's a lot of work goes into lines and meters.
I got it, but we've been doing it. And so all of a sudden now we're asking for an expansion of personnel in a system that is really Fairview
Growing.
and Knuckles Curve.
Fairview, Nichols Curve, Grant, and Old Town. There's actually 4 works.
Four water systems.
So I don't know, it's never come up at a PSA meeting that we've need more people, that we had a problem, and all of a sudden now we're asking for another person. So I'm having a hard time getting my head around it. It's only 21,000, I get it. And why do I-
Well, I actually have a question about how it works. So when Gaylight sells water to Grayson County, wherever that line is, they've got a meter there. Total volume that goes out to all of our customers. We buy the water
From that meter.
from that meter.
Every gallon goes through that meter is ours.
And how much revenue is generated from the water that we sell to our residents?
We basically
I don't have that in front of me, but we do have, that is the revenue offset. This fund actually has to balance itself.
Okay. So
Does that answer your question?
I think so. All the water that we sell covers this,
Yes.
It's not a
And if it-
money maker.
but it's a
Does
cost, it's not costing us
does
anything.
it cover the part-time position?
It's a break even.
I will make sure there has been
Because
just.
we haven't done a rate increase in about 3 years.
We haven't done a rate increase in a long time. I'm pretty sure that it does. We may have to dip into our carryover that we have in that particular fund to do that. And I will have that all nailed down.
And that's a fund that we basically have to balance.
Yes, we do have to balance it. So if there's an adjustment there, we will definitely let you guys know.
So any request in this would be offset by rate increase or
Rate increase or using the fund balance of this particular fund. When I first came, we were actually having to subsidize it through the general fund, but we haven't had to do that in a very long time.
Is that same, I'm sorry, I didn't know how this worked. The same thing in Grant, same thing in Freeze, same thing Knuckles Curve,
Not part of Freeze.
Old Town.
We're Old Town and Fairview, which includes Old Town, Fairview.
But every one of those 4 systems has a meter that says you owe us this amount of money?
There's really just two.
Okay.
Well, no, you're right, there are three. There's three. The Old Town has, its own meter, which includes Knuckles Curve. There's one for Fairview, and then we are billed for Grant.
From Trap Mill?
Yes.
And this meter, the same way they like anything that comes through that meter
That's,
is ours.
I'm just curious.
I have a less of a issue if our revenues are covering this, but we haven't discussed that or revenue increase, levy. We haven't discussed at a PSA meeting a need for another person, and we haven't discussed a rate increase either, and that's problematic. Well, all of a sudden we get a budget saying we need more people in the PSA. The PSA hadn't even, I mean, we're the PSA, but we haven't had that discussion with the PSA.
So we can ask one more question. The extension that we're talking about doing Edmond Road area, if I forget the name, Louisville Line. That comes out of general county funds or ARPA money, or it doesn't come out of this.
No, it does not.
So we have to come up with the initial capital to extend that Louisville Lane. But then the sale of water to those
So, and the maintenance of the
and the
line,
maintenance.
once it's created,
Would also,
would go into this fund.
Okay.
and we can get grant funding. We already know we can get some grant funding from that if we end up doing that. We're still getting requests for the Louisville Line, by the way, too. Probably come up in the June, that'll come up in the June BSA meeting, Louisville Line project, I think. Yeah.
All right, let me try and wrap this up, make sure I'm understanding what we're headed. What I heard was if the revenue, covers the cost, is 30K, then we're agreeing that that's okay, or we need to have further discussion on what the dues assigned to that one PSA person, is. Those 3 areas.
I don't want to, John fan. If you say you need it, PSA guy came and said, we need this person. You know, ideally that would have happened at the PSA meeting, and we can make that decision. But if the numbers match and you agree, I'm okay. But I just, it's a permanent increase, and part-time jobs have a really, really good habit of becoming full-time. And then the next thing you know, we need another part-time. And so,
I don't have an answer for you whether to move forward with this yet.
And I think in the fence fall, I think the reason he didn't ask for it would be to say he knew that he needed it, but I think he was waiting for this budget cycle because it was close. He's known for a while that he needed this. But I think he was just thinking, okay, in the next budget, I'll make it. In the next budget, I think it was the same.
So we got a half a person here and we got 2 full-time at the county for emergency services. Now, what are we talking, just in personnel increases in costs, getting on up there?
For the EMS positions, for the EMS position.
And I'm just purely focused on the expense line that you say you're having trouble, you know, and is that really where we need to be, given we know we got equipment issues and other stuff related to it?
Yeah.
And we've got new truck, new ambulance, all that stuff. So it's 100K.
No, it's about 70.
168.
168 from 95.
That's for the 2 additional.
Yes.
195 to 160.
What's the staff's take on adding 2 additional EMS people? My recollection of last year's budget meetings, there was a request for 3. And 3 quick response vehicles. We had no clue if that would help solve our EMS response time, call time. And so we funded one to let it flush out, but it's my understanding we don't even have a quick response vehicle.
The vehicle being used, is the vehicle that we have, so we're making do with the vehicle. It is ordered, it's actually waiting on equipment to be installed, the true quick response vehicle, so all we had to do was finish it up.
What was the wait time on that vehicle? I can't remember. 12 months?
No, that one, that's a major one so far.
Oh,
I guess my point on it, we're fully committing to going down a direction that we have no idea if it's gonna improve our response time. But 2 additional people, we haven't even proven that one is helping yet. It's just, that's what my feedback last year from my district was, we don't want quick response vehicles. We need help with retention and recruitment. And that's the reason I didn't fully support the 3 positions last year. And I know they've been requested, but I don't know if we've talked about it in here unless it's one I missed.
The 2 additional positions,
Mm-hmm.
we certainly talked about it at when Paul was here, we went through his budget line by line.
But that's
Yeah.
the only time.
What's that?
That was the request.
Yeah, I know Paul talked about it. I
Oh,
don't
you
remember us talking about it. And I don't want to be that guy who digs his heels in, but I mean, we're going full speed to a paid service, that we have paid services in this county that are failing and volunteer services that are not failing. And when you make that commitment to 2 additional people and 1 additional vehicle, or maybe it's not an additional vehicle, it's to cover it 24 hours a day, that's right.
it's not additional. It's only people. They use the same
You
vehicle.
made a statement, I'm trying to understand what you're saying. You have paid services that are failing and volunteer services, and you're looking at those exact same services?
I mean, depending on the part of the county, yeah. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the Independence Rescue Squad is a paid service. And we had to rescue them last year, give them some money to get by. And then the place that it was determined that we needed this quick response vehicle the most was in Elk Creek. And that's a partially paid service. And so my concern is, and I can certainly be convinced that I think it's something we've got to be able to provide to our citizens. That's a commitment that we're making to go to a fully paid system in the county. That eventually that will lead us down that road to be a fully paid system in the county that I'm not sure our tax revenue can support.
And the other point was, we haven't exhausted, in my opinion, if you go back and read the fire board study, there were several things they recommended doing, and we haven't exhausted, in my opinion, the efforts on the retention and the recruitment piece. And, we know our demographics are not on our side yet, but that doesn't mean we have exhausted everything to try to make sure that it's done. And we have the responsibility, but right now we rely heavily on our volunteer systems to do that. And so far, especially in the Western end, they're providing that service. But with the average age of 60 and older, above 60 is our average age of our first responders, especially on the rescue side. We've got to do something, but I just don't know at this point, and I'm on Brantley's side, if investing the additional, close to 100K in people at the county level is the best use of that 100K when we know we have more immediate needs, communication challenges in the Western end, new 911 system that needs to be filled, vertical assets to support those 911 systems, new fire truck and a new rescue vehicle. All that adds to that bottom line, right? So the question is this the time? I'm not convinced that we've done all we can to make sure that our volunteers and our partially paid services as they exist we've done everything we can to make them do that before we take on a mission at the county level. And I said it last time I was in here, I'll say it again, I was involved with 2 911 calls within 10 days, and the first people there were the volunteers. And so I'm about supporting them and trying to make that system work.
Yeah, I think we are. I'm agnostic in some of this. I think we have to make it work. I thought that the comparison I think I'm hearing is, well, we have one person that's full-time, or 2 people that are full-time. I don't know if you compare that to volunteers that are spread throughout the county in a similar fashion. I don't know if you can compare the 2 things.
Up until last year,
Yeah.
we had 1 paid person at the county.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a responsibility to go to calls. That's not what a coordinator's responsibilities are.
Right.
We created a position to be able to respond to calls.
Right.
But we haven't, the challenge, I think, is how do you validate the proof of concept with 1 person in 1 vehicle? There's either you put more people in there, which is $100,000, or you look at maybe not going down that road right away and looking at other options to be able to make sure that we can continue to provide the service. We have the responsibility, the agencies have the mission. And that's, I think, at least from my angle. So the question back to staff is that the best use? I know that was Paul's recommendation. I get it. I understand the demographics of where we're going, but is that the best use of that 100K?
And one thing I remember, Supervisor Plant, was that also it was the commission that voted to go this route. It came and spoke down in the auditorium. 2 of them came and said, we feel like this is a route we need to start heading down. Not too fast, but we need to.
I understood the argument.
Yeah,
but
and that was commission. That wasn't Paul. That was commission that said that.
I understand the argument. The argument's valid. I mean, you look at the demographics. I get it. I'm just not convinced we're at that point yet that we want to commit. Because once you're committed, it's hard to go back. It's like, you add the part-time person, next thing you know, they're full-time. It's hard to go back the other way when we're at the point where we're having to talk about cutting services, from a budget standpoint.
I think you have a very valid point. This is still so new. We've only had that full-time person on, started January 9th. So we're looking at 4 months. The data collection has just begun. What if these positions be tentatively approved after a year of data?
We'll be in another budget cycle before we have that
Well,
data,
not
because we don't even
necessarily.
have the rescue vehicle yet.
Not necessarily, because again, they're making do with the vehicle. Paul's driving his personal vehicle. The marked unit has been assigned to the medic. With the data collection, giving it 12 months from January to December, and then reevaluating in January, and then having the permission whether or not to hire at that particular time. Giving a year's worth of data, whether it's helping or not.
My initial take is, I don't know that I want to have an in-stride decision based on that data in the middle of the budget season. We could revisit it and begin to have that discussion, because that's really at the beginning of our budget cycle for 24-25. But I don't know if I want to go down the road of, at this point, of flagging that amount of money to go for hires. I'm just not there yet. I understand everything is trying to go, all that stuff. But
Not even one altitude
yeah, right now.
to get more coverage.
I mean, it all goes back to priorities, right? I mean, that's what a lot of this discussion's been about, is what's above the line, what's below the line. I just don't see the compelling argument yet. When you have like Elk Creek, and I talked to their chief a couple weeks ago at a fundraiser for the rescue squad, and they think they have enough money to make it through to September, is what my recollection is, to keep the doors, and they're partially paid during the day. And so if we got paid people, and granted, these are paid with benefits and it may be a different level, but that also could be a potential distractor for the volunteers to continue to serve if this thing continues to grow. And again, it's a hard decision. I understand where the demographics are pointing. I'm just not convinced that we need to commit to 2 more people at the county level when we don't have enough information yet to see. Conceptually, I get it. I just don't know we have enough data to make a decision when we got all the other things demanding.
And we will have that data one way or the other.
At some point,
Without
yeah,
proof.
at
Yeah,
some point.
yeah, but we have asked him to keep that data so we can look at it sometime and say, okay, is it justified or not?
What will be the measure of success?
Calls they run. Yeah, I mean, missed.
How many minutes out? One person, how many they missed?
Well, no, it'd be, in my estimation, it'd be, if Elk Creek missed it, did this position
The roller
cover?
was.
So how many missed calls did this paid position cover for other agencies that couldn't? To me, that's a pretty good metric.
The number
I
of-
was able to leave the gate center and cover a call for freeze because they weren't able to.
And you know you're not covering this much time right now for
One person,
8 hours.
You can collect the same amount of data in 8 hours as you can in 24 hours.
But calls vary.
I,
They're more of the evening and night than they are during the day.
well,
Let's
then
put
you
the
should
guy on
probably
the evening and
position the new
Are
person
the,
when the most calls are being called.
are the volunteers, sorry, I don't want the background on this. How are the volunteers doing shifts? Are they just call ad hoc?
24 hours a day.
Just as they get called, they go? Okay.
I think internal to the agencies, people might have some pecking order for a weekend or whatever, but
And I don't know about our single employee. Certainly, he can't. I don't think we have an expectation that he's on call 24/7.
I think it should be 8 hours. I mean, you can't expect anybody to work more than 8 hours a day. But I think it doesn't make a whole lot of sense that we've got Paul and Philip working Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, because your data's.
Paul's not taking calls.
no, but just take the example. So the first incident was the daytime.
Yeah.
It was 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
First was a volunteer, second was the Elk Creek ambulance, third was Philip that showed up. Fourth was a sheriff's deputy, then the fire department. So you had a huge turnout, all right? And that was Elk Creek paid. They were able to respond. So you had a huge response. Well, if everybody's coming to one show, what's happening everywhere else? Sure. And I think to Brantley's point, if the dispatch dispatches and somebody accepts the tone to respond, that doesn't necessarily mean then that the paid folks at the county level need to respond. The challenge should be if the folks that are paid during the day are the ones responsible for responding. And we're having challenges at nighttime. Let's take Elk Creek, for example, of responding at night because it's a volunteer system at night. Maybe that's when the paid person at the county needs to be pulling the 8-hour shift.
And the data's already out there where somebody needed. Mitch, I mean, we sit there at the Grayson Galax board meeting. We know that Freeze is missing the most of the calls that Galax is having to hit. And I don't want to get into micromanaging because I don't think that's what this board should be doing, but we already know where the biggest need is by looking at the calls missed, whether it's Baywood, Freeze, Elk Creek. And we already know what hours of the day those are the most. I mean, you want some data that looks pretty good? I would position my full-time person in that area when all the calls are getting dropped.
I can tell you, Dennis, just in the conversation this week, Paul is starting to look at those protocols from the dispatch and how they, how they're set up and who responds and all that. And I can't tell you at this point what he's gonna come up with, but he is starting to look at what we're talking about. Just had a conversation Monday.
They've done toenail protocols for a long time now with Road Creek, Haywood, Fairview.
Yeah.
And there's a running list that the commission I know gets every month of how many missed calls there are from each agency, so. That information should be pretty regular.
And that should drive when that person, so you can have you can do the assessment of the utility of that.
Yeah, hey, look, I got it. Some of this is new to me. I haven't gotten into this, so, I think a couple things that hit me. Well, look, I think certainly the person that's getting paid will have to, we'll have to look at the data. I think the data will help drive us. I also think there is some, I don't know that we can continuously have somebody over the course of a year on a days off, Wednesday, Thursday, midnight shift. I don't know that that is sustainable for one person. Maybe, I don't know. I used to do a 3-month rotation and sometimes 6-month rotations of shifts. So I don't know what that would look like. If your point is that this is all the calls are coming between midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning, and our paid person needs to be able to respond to those calls in threes or whatever. I don't know enough about this to give a good.
At this point for the budget, though, it's just, it comes down to me, is do we need it, are those two positions needed this FY? Or is there a better use of the funds? And my sense is right now is I don't think that they're needed. I understand they came from the commission, that they were part of the original study. We needed to think about transitioning. That was in the fire board study.
Yeah.
I just don't know that this FY, given all the other challenges, if that's where we need to spend that 100,000 or whatever it is. That's
And I do know one thing we just hit on a minute ago was one thing Paul wanted it for too was flexibility and being more effective and covering more. If you got more than one person, you be a little more flexible and a little more effective.
But you're still not gonna cover around the clock
No.
7 days a week.
No, you're gonna have to have 4 or 5 people do that vacation.
Well, that's exactly where we're headed is kind of my point, and we don't have enough information to know this, why this use of our dollars. I mean, the department, if we approve this, is gonna grow by 400% in 3 years.
I thought that, they're supposed to document what calls they do, who they, and if it looks like in a year that range from 3 calls a year, we don't need them. But on the other hand, if you save one person's life in that year, what's that worth?
So that's why I was trying to figure out what are we looking for as a measure of success. I'm not sure what the answer is yet, but we can provide data to go. But John's example was, well, is he reporting that he went to the call? And he was. He went to the call in Oak Creek. He was the second or third person there. And John's point is, well, the volunteer was there first. Okay, so there's got to be some deconfliction, and maybe that's.
Well, you could take the very next call and say Philip was there first. I mean, it doesn't.
Sure.
That's just one example.
Yeah.
Well, when the fire, when a call comes out of Fred Jones, everybody's gonna be there. Yeah. And you might get a call that calls you every weekend over a head cold.
Yeah, right.
And they're gonna say, I ain't going on this.
Sure.
I've been there, done that. I mean, you get people that'll just use you.
We learned that again last Grayson.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to be I don't want to grow emergency services. We've got to have it. To me, the justification is just that now we can cover around the clock for 5 days a week. I don't know if that's good enough justification for me.
One other thing that has come to my mind with the question, what is the measure of success? I think that may have to come from the commission itself. Is that, it takes 2, maybe 3 to run a call. if an agency can provide one, and the support keeps that agency responding to calls, is that a measure of success? Is that another, I mean, is that the, I think, in my mind, that's the point of having a paid person. That may take a little bit more time to say, okay, yes, because we have that additional person that we can count on, yes, our response rate is improving.
I think the overall, I don't know how you define it, but is the health and welfare of the citizens of Grayson County impacted in a positive way by having that person there? The answer is yes. And we go down that path. But if the answer is I can't really tell where it is, then that's proving the pudding, and we've only got one livelihood that we're messing with instead of three.
Exactly. I see what you're saying. And I do think more time and more data with the addition of the one will be more beneficial and help everyone make a better informed decision.
Just from an optics standpoint, I mean, the chief at one of our agencies who sits on the commission, who was an advocate to fill these positions, has been the one that's been hired. And nobody won't say it out loud, but the optics of that is not good. And hired from the region who says they don't need a quick response vehicle and they don't want a paid person in their midst.
While we're kind of on EMS fire, I've had one thing that's brought to me, as we're considering the budget and everything. I guess everybody, I don't know how many might have missed, when Randy Library and Gary Hash come up here and talked about the fire department, just spend some money. There's still some interest in maybe divvying that out yearly to each agency rather than people waiting through a cycle. And they could potentially, I guess, get financing and equipment or stuff, or make plans. And I told the fire chief and freeze up, Randy, of course, you come up here and spoke, that I would, see what the general consensus of the board was, or everybody's feelings on that. Are we hardcore stuck to a rotation system, or, because it's going to be some period of time, and still you're going to have equipment that's going to age out, beyond their, whatever they call it, certification period or whatever. You're still maybe wanting some input, kind of how the board and the county felt.
Their argument was compelling. I made a lot of sense to me. So I'm okay with giving it up to 25 weeks.
I'm definitely good with it.
That does affect how if we can figure that out. Yeah. Listen.
The only comment I have on that is that money that we decided to go to apparatuses, that money has to be earmarked for apparatuses.
I think there's mechanisms internally that we can use, just like our ATL and local life funding. They submit the invoice, we pay the invoice for them. That way we know that it's going toward what we need to do. Does that
Yeah, I agree with that. If
follow your train of thought?
I go for trinkets and toys and stuff.
Yeah, I think it needs to be codified in some sort of an MOU on how we're going to do this. It's important enough to say, it's probably important enough to write it down. So,
To me, just like every one of those agencies have a different priority on what type of vehicle they need. Each agency in this county has a different priority of what they would do to improve their individual agency. And just like we saw last year with the folks in the western end of the district, the volunteers were, John was with me at several meetings. They don't want a thing to do with a paid person, and they don't want a thing to do with a quick response vehicle. But just like Gary and Mr. Lineberry came here, the compelling argument, I would love to have all the agencies individually come here and say what their needs are. And to me, that's what we can be supporting in a big way. I think we all know we're gonna go to a paid system at some point in the future, but that $100,000 extra dollars that we're gonna hire 2 people, that can impact 4 agencies in a really positive way. What's that?
Kind of why I maybe threw that out there too.
I'm glad you did.
I think, they do the fundraising and everything, and I think they try, and they're pretty good stewards of what they have, their resources are, and I think if we've got a check system where, it is going, where it's been specified for them, then I'm good with them getting a little money along, help them all.
I think that's a fairly simple interim.
Anything else?
So I think, I just want to make sure I've heard the decision at this point, is that no new positions. No new paid positions, is that what we're going to right now? Those 2 positions, saying no, those 2 positions.
Now, I'm talking about just 2 or no new positions at all.
Well, I've heard a couple things. Yeah. So there are no new positions for the EMS, no new quick response positions. From a water perspective, a part-time position, we'd like a little more information. On that, is the revenue cover the positions? That's what I've heard. And if so, validate whether that's really a requirement. Is that what I heard? Okay. Anything else? So we're killing those positions.
Just giving mine, I don't know what they
We're back to our above the line, below the line. They just fall below the line right now. Because the money that my takeaway is that the money we think could be used for something, a competing requirement that's a higher priority.
We'll never lack for activity. We will never lack for services. The priority is always the strength. It's not about whether you like it or not. It's not personal. Like that. It's not that. We're not going there until we've had more data, until we validate this position. So, you want some measure of success.
I can't tell you what that success looks like.
We'll try to figure it out.
I think we'll get some, just like, we've all been in for, that a little bit longer. And they are playing that. What they do. Got to justify the position.
That's what I think, is justify the position.
All knows that. So that'll have.
They're not all like doing away with it.
The 2 positions,
Two.
2 new, that's what we're discussing now.
We're seeing how that one's working.
Well, take a year, evaluate the position. We'll look at this increase in the next fiscal year.
Yeah, I don't think the concept, I get the concept.
It's,
Yeah.
I got it.
I'm with you.
I got you. I think we need a little more time for this debate to go, how's this position working out? Is it producing what we hoped it would produce? Is there some, are the paid and volunteers working jointly? Are we meshing those schedules? And then what are the results we're getting out of that paid position? And that, a 4-month period, I don't know that that's a long enough period to look at that as well. I don't know if I can give you good information. I don't know if I could say, hey, we're definitely getting a lot of bang for our buck on this, and it's worth spending the money.
And on the flip side of
But
that,
I got the commission wanted that, but I think we do our due diligence to take a little more time to look at this.
the flip side of that is we go ahead and hire 2 new positions, we've got 3, we look at it a year from now, and we decide that it's not making any impact, then we've affected 2 people's lives in a big way.
That is true. However, it could be advertised this is a temporary position. That is all in the being
And
upfront.
What type of position?
Temporary. Temporary,
Which could be converted to a permanent full-time.
correct.
But I think for the time, by next year, next January, we're gonna have a year's worth of data,
Year and a half,
and we're gonna be, we'll do,
4 months, yeah.
we'll have a year, by next January.
Oh, by
we'll have a
next
year's
January.
worth of data, and that's when this board, or the next board, is gonna be starting to look at that budget again. And we'll have a year's worth of data to look at.
And so we're good, or what, my head shakes, yes. Yes, and then the last piece, are we approving the, school board at this point in time? Are we all good with the school board's budget request?
Your only request is that we put it all into one line, right?
That's exactly right, that's it,
That was the school's request.
that's the school's request.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I get it.
That's why I didn't think Kelly needed to be up here for that.
Well, I know they got a budget deadline in May, the school does. So do we want to go ahead and approve their budget as you know?
I think it's helpful for them, the state's still holding them hostage though at this point in time, so. Until the state likes this, but it would be beneficial for them, so they go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we could approve that.
Chair, entertain a motion to approve the school's budget.
So, no,
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, with no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Chair also aye.
And the last piece we want to discuss today is our capital improvement projects, and my right, Lisa, is that the last piece?
Mhm.
You have copies of that? You have copies of that? Yeah.
Do you, Mom? Oh, I need one.
They might, we need break for, so,
Hey,
Good enough.
Let me get a little. Serious.
like, we're good. We'll take a,
Let's take a 5-minute break.
about 2 hours.
anybody need more water?
Please.
I got one right there, somebody.
oh, yeah, now, we're gonna get built later.
It was the,
I'm good, thanks.
I'll take
okay. You're just more candy.
Well, maybe. There's not a lot of, for me, just being new, I don't have any sense of what they're doing, like how much they're paying people, what increases they're taking on. I don't have any sense of any of that. I feel like I'm running on the fly with some of this right now.
Oh, you are.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Baptism by fire, it happens. That's how they get around this whole additional request. You just want it all facilities so that they can spend it.
Yeah.
On the field.
Sure.
But it's their money. It's the.
So Jay's like, oh, God, she's supposed to take off she's supposed to start a colonoscopy prep at 3. I said, Jay.
She can still do it.
I said, start it right now. I said,
Start
just work it out.
Get out of jail free card. They gotta go.
So I
Literally gotta go.
literally.
Who was that?
A lot of information.
Thank you.
Too right. It's good, it's a good learning process.
Yeah.
Covered a lot of territory.
2 hours.
But I didn't go, I better go.
No, thank you.
I've got a bottle over here.
I'm good. Thank you.
Don't want to go to the restaurant.
What's wrong with that, Ram?
You do? What's wrong?
I'm telling you, my college.
You gotta put that green button in.
Friday, still.
He still won't come? Is the other than that doing okay? Is he in with the Hughes or not yet?
No, I ain't putting it in. I put him in there.
All the green grass?
Yes, it is.
It's still live, okay.
When I put him, it's no, I had nothing in there. That's why.
We had one lamb dead, one was Saturday morning. I just walk out there, it looked like a nativity scene. And he was just lying there sitting like this with his head tucked under, kind of like that. Mary Thomason said that's the suicide position for that. But the only thing I can figure is that, well, I couldn't really figure out what happened. But we didn't do a necropsy on that one. We had another one that had that similar look that ended up having toxicity and some listeria thing.
Jones had 2 kids.
No,
Thanks, God, he's scripted.
Yeah, we lost, I think, 2 this year.
If I can't make it, I will call in. At the 23rd.
That's one we gotta try.
I'm in town.
Except for this.
Good, thank you.
Right.
I think we have everybody back.
David got, do we need to, David
No,
need to?
it's still on.
Still, okay. All right. Since everybody's back, we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Ms. Boyd.
Okay. But you're gonna have to jump in here on some of this, just. So what we have here is a 24 list of potential capital improvement projects. Potential capital improvement projects that will require funding. Hey, Lisa, if you could, the first things I want us to take a look at are the ones that were approved last year
Okay,
that carry over funding for this year. That'd be the first ones that were approved last year that want to carry over funding for this year. Okay?
very good. That is your second set where it says, source of funding, ARPA carryover. Those are items that were approved last year, did not get spent. A lot of those has to do with, procurement, supply chain, and just the speed of the projects in order. So that is the ambulance, it is on order. The,
So we're clear though, the ambulance is a no kidding ambulance or is that the rapid response vehicle?
it is a no kidding ambulance.
Okay.
It will be dedicated to,
Right.
a particular agency.
Right.
There is, grant funding, so this 225,000 may not be that, it may be much less
Yeah.
than 225,000,
Okay.
but there is grant funding available for that.
Right.
That has been applied for. The library parking lot, Mr. Smith, in working with the town and the library, that is gonna happen. In FY 24, the public works contractor truck,
And let me add, we hope it's still 150. But it could be, that could be a little higher. But Hurt and Profit couldn't give me a new estimate for this meeting. They said by the end of the week.
okay, so I will star that to come back to. The compactor truck is on order, there's a PO right there, so that money has been encumbered. Fleet vehicle, back and forth on whether or not we're gonna actually purchase a vehicle or lease a vehicle. We missed our window, that's why that didn't happen. The communication and housing point lookout, that's moving the new building onto a concrete pad. We have, I think, 4 times we've put that out for bid and not received any hits on that yet. Maybe it will happen this week. The 5th is the next deadline. The White Top Heritage Center, again, that is carryover for the work that is going on up there that's ongoing. And the pool repair, originally that was $249,000. So much has already been spent. The rest is encumbered. So that is the carryover pieces.
Contractor has to come this fall, finish it up, they can't do it this first.
It's gotta be done in the fall.
So the money that you're showing, that's all adds up to 1.9,
Yes, that's the carryover.
1.09. Is that considered committed, all of that, out of our total?
The ambulance is committed. The public works contractor is committed. And the pool repair is committed.
But I mean, for the purpose of meeting the deadline of committing these funds.
Yes, that would, carrying these over would meet
So
that.
that's
guideline.
encumbered, it's a word I should be.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's not a PO for every single thing on the list on the carryover. Once a PO is established, then it's fully encumbered and we will meet those deadlines.
But the money sitting in the checking account.
Absolutely. Sitting there waiting on us to spend it.
So then everything below that 1.09 is the stuff that is still waiting to be encumbered.
Yes, as well as 2 items above it.
The reason I want to tackle these first is because I understand that there's been decisions made on these to go ahead with these projects. So unless we want to re-engage on these particular projects, then those would be off the table. Does that make sense to everybody?
So when you say the ones that are above that,
There's 2 access road, industrial park, broadband expansion, tower.
okay, those 2 are the ones that haven't been encumbered.
Yes, those would be new expenses, new encumbrances.
Probably should have stacked those a little bit different.
That's okay, I got it.
I got you.
I just did it alphabetically,
I
I'm
got
sorry.
you. I got you. My brain went to decision made to decisions to be made, I guess.
And then, so are we going down?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I guess, go ahead,
No,
Lisa.
you go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess we'll go down to the 2 decisions that, well, I guess we put in, there's potential, the 2 on top are the access road for industrial park, recreation park, which we don't know for grant funding yet. We don't know how much it's gonna cost us yet. But the potential cost there is $400,000 for that.
That also was a trail connector that has to continue on sidewalk.
It is currently under study. We did use ARPA funding for somewhat over $37,000
$37,000 for that.
to have that engineering study done.
On access road,
Yes, for the access road. That was approved last budget cycle.
and we don't have that study back yet.
No, we don't.
Okay, you want to go down to, Lisa, you want to start with the Baywood Fund and just work down the list on these?
Sure. The facilities, as you know, what to do with the Baywood property is under a facility study right now. Administratively, we're looking at what are our potential expenses for FY24. Could it be that we need more engineering studies? We need something to next step after the facility.
Yeah, I think we debated whether we put money in a potential fund there now or we wait on that. Do we need to make a decision on adding potential money to that we may have to spend some money for additional engineering studies, whatever else may come up in 24, or do we hold on that right now? So we did put a certain amount. We don't have an amount. We're waiting on the feasibility study, having meetings on that, so we didn't have an amount to actually put it in.
Is all of this in the budget?
No, this
What
is
of this-
completely separate. This is a budget within itself.
Okay. Do we have 2.737 million sitting in the capital improvement?
No, we do not. That is why there's only $250,000 listed actually out of the capital improvement fund. The rest of them have different sources of funding listed.
So you'll see grant funding, you'll see casino funding, you'll see capital improvement funding, and ARPA funding.
Oh, I'm sorry, 115,000.
Is that your question? Brandon?
No, the question I really want to ask is much dollar. What of these, like this top up here, the ARPA carryover, we decided last year to spend the ARPA money on that. It's earmarked, sitting in the bank account.
Yes, sir.
So there's 1.7 if you count the top two.
If you count the top two, correct, yes.
So there's 1.8 that's sitting in the bank account that we appropriated last year that has not been spent yet.
Correct.
And if we leave all of that, we're looking at another $1 million down here that does not sit in a checking account anywhere.
The Baywood Fund, money sitting in the bank. The capital improvement fund, that $115,000 is sitting in the bank, so to speak. The fire truck, casino money will be coming in. We'll have that in time. The Lundy property improvements, we're hoping for a grant with a little bit of capital improvement fund investment. It depends on how much grant money comes in. So I was very conservative in that I know that our capital improvement fund is very lean. That's why I've listed these different sources of funding instead of just our capital improvement fund.
But right now, it looks like we've encumbered 1.7 million out of the ARPA.
If you approve the access road and the broadband expansion.
Right, so let's just hit the I believe button for that for a minute.
Okay.
And then all the other fundings are for different sources other than ARPA, but
Correct.
doesn't that leave us with 2.something million with ARPA that out of the 3?
Yes, it does. That is not encumbered.
So when does that become part of the discussion of capital improvement? Because I thought we were up against a deadline to encumber that.
We are. We have all of fiscal year 24 and half of fiscal year 25 to encumber this money. We have to have it encumbered by the,
So we've got time to work the other 2.
we do have a little bit more time. And I think that is where the, maybe speaking out of turn here.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I think that's where the communication towers, that's the conversation that we need to have. Unless there's another project that is more,
Well, there's
important.
there's 2, and there's vertical assets for broadband, potential cellular, but there's also the 911 piece of Mike's mother. And I know that we don't necessarily have a firm number yet on the equipment piece, but my question, Mike, is that my concern is from the broadband communication committee is what's all that equipment gonna hang on, right? So what I'm not clear on is what additional vertical assets does the 911 equipment need to have in order to provide the coverage that we need for the county for that equipment? Because what I think we need to do is ensure that don't have duplication of effort, and the left hand's not talking to the right hand, all of a sudden we got a tower that's being used for one thing, but not for the other. Do you have a sense of the vertical asset requirements?
There'll be a total of 18 microwaves. There's 9 paths. Don't ask me about. According to the radio tech, there's 9 paths that crisscrosses the county that it will take. So talking about 9 structures or 18.
No, I think, because I think you have 2 antennas going 2 different ways, and that's your 18.
So I'm not sure I think it will require tire construction, but I'm not sure the number.
So that's the other day in the broadband meeting we were having with Tom and Stephen and I, is that we know we've got 2 point whatever, we know we've got some interest from cellular folks that may want to expand. We know broadband's going to build some towers. We know the Wired Road has 3, maybe 4 towers in the western end, but we don't know that they're strong enough. We know the Point Lookout Tower, which I think is the top one that we may have to. That's the top one, right? It's Point Lookout, that broadband tower.
No, that is just simply
Just
general
any tower
tower
anywhere.
construction, anywhere.
So we've got a lot of competing. We've got a lot of potential for vertical assets from 3 different forms of communication in the county, and I don't know that we have a sense geographically in the number that we need. And so we got to buy the equipment, but we got to build the vertical assets. And what I worry about is if we're buying the equipment before we're ready to hang it on a pole or a tower or something like that, so we're out of sync. Because if they're going to fill that equipment next year, potentially take 18 months to decide the tower.
I can contact radio tech and see.
Well, I think Stephen.
Yeah, so what I thought, after we discussed this, I need to get Tom and Paul on the same. There's just 2 different efforts, lines of effort kind of going on here. And I want to try to sync these, understand where our kind of decision points are. So I asked them to get together. We'll be Thursday morning. And then I thought we could produce some timelines and some kind of how these 2 projects should overlay each other. If it's towers, it's kind of our first thought that we have to accomplish towers first. Both of us agree to that. Staff agrees to that. Focus there first. If it's buying equipment first, then we need to understand that as well.
We may need to commit funds to the effort in order for the commission to be able to do the contract they need to do, but we may not have to spend it. We know we need vertical assets of some flavor.
I have another question. On our project list, it says broadband expansion tower construction. With the conversations I'm hearing, is this going to become communications expansion?
That's what it needs to be, because the communication infrastructure effort includes broadband, which isn't necessarily a vertical asset. It's got fiber, it's got cable, it's got cellular. But there's towers required potentially to get more cell phones coverage in here, mobile, and there's towers needed for these microwave systems. And we know that some of the places that aren't going to have fiber are going to have to need some sort of vertical asset to do the fixed-base wireless or 5G. And so what I'm wondering is if we are comfortable with what we have right there, then the next line item for ARPA is the communication infrastructure or vertical assets or whatever associated with that. So that we're basically saying we're going to encumber that money for those assets we know that we need to be able to do communication infrastructure for broadband, cellular, and 911. It's just an idea out there. Because that, to me, really makes a lot of sense that for that type of funding, the ARPA federal funding can be used for that sort of infrastructure.
But this is going to have to kind of, I guess this is the horse before the cart. This is gonna have to come along before any kind of radio system.
It's a vertical access.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be functional in this county.
Understood. Okay. What else? Anything else?
Just want to make sure that there's not a project on missing that you expected to see. These are the ones that we as a staff work together that we truly thought we could afford based on our buckets of money. But is there something else that is missing?
You know, I don't know if we need to connect dollars to it, but, you know, we talked about the fair facility, the Elk Creek, and that Elk Creek, multi-use facility.
We did discuss it.
What was the outcome of that?
We're not quite ready in FY '24.
Okay.
I don't, you know, they were talking about having might be one, there was a advisory committee, and then there was a board, and I don't know that so they certainly haven't come to us with some type of proposal at this point. So I still think they're working through.
The organizational structure. Yeah, they settled on a board of, the fire department rep, landowner, the food basket, the food bank folks for, Hands Grace, and then the fair rep, that's the board, and then the advisory group made up a bunch of other people. So that, they've kind of settled on that structure, but you're right, they're not ready to come forward with the next step. Because they're still waiting, they had to get that information to the Virginia fairs in order for them to finish up the big kind of the business plan.
Any other projects? Is there anything?
Okay. Just to give you an idea of our, as we polish and get everything ready for publication, we're ready to do that. You'll see an EDA budget. That's just simply going to be what's in their budget, what you want to go ahead and approve them to spend. That's been an oversight in the past. We want to make sure that we cover that this time. You'll see a budget for ASAP. We're their fiscal agent. You just simply need to say, hey, this is their money. This is how much they want to spend this year. We're going to, you agree to that. I'm trying to think if there's any other funds that you haven't seen in the past. You'll see the DARE fund in the publication. You'll see capital improvement. Anyway, there may be some other funds that you see that we've not talked about in depth, like we talked about the PSA budget, but those are just kind of pass through dollars that you guys are in control of. You need to appropriate for fiscal year '24. So I don't want you to feel like we're throwing something at you at the last minute. Just know that those are just kind of pass through dollars. That's the only other thing I have on my mind.
What timelines? What's next? Help me understand what's next here as far as timelines.
We're very, very close to having to advertise. That needs to be,
It's on the agenda for Thursday night or next Thursday. We need to request permission for public hearing. And that will the ad will have to go in May 17th you'll come out in the paper the following week, following 2 weeks.
We have another meeting, couple go on,
Yeah.
pictures here.
another meeting on May 25th.
Yeah, May 25th, which is after we need to get the budget
I got the 23rd. Has that changed?
Oh, I thought, I may
Once
be
it's
wrong.
been advertised. we'll know.
May 23rd, I have a board of supervisors to hold final work session.
Yes,
I'm
that is
sorry.
correct, May
I had the
23rd.
25th in my head. I
May
apologize.
23rd,
That's our final work session.
But we advertise May 17th, right?
yes.
We send it to the paper, so we can only change it 1% after we advertise.
Plus or minus 1%.
Everybody tracking on that?
The budget has to go out on May 17th.
Yes. The advertisement into the paper. So you need to be pretty
Advertisement for the
close.
public hearing.
And 1% change at that point in time.
$300,000 basically. All it can change, plus or minus.
And we're not meeting before we.
We've already approved, now, on that agenda was to approve the school budget, but we've already done that.
We did that. That's it. 8.5, not 8 dollars.
I got that May 11th, is that not?
That is our regular board supervisors meeting.
You want another deep dive in some of this stuff?
The 17th is what day, Tuesday?
Wednesday,
It probably would be helpful if we could get together on the 16th or the 15th. Just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Is that doable for everyone?
It have to be advertised.
we can push it out.
Next issue. Then I'm not gonna be.
We have an ED,
Why do we have,
EDA
why do
meeting
we have to why do we have to advertise the budget by May 17th? Why couldn't we do
You
it?
have to advertise for the public
for
hearing,
the public hearing that will happen in June.
and you're limited to those 2 weeks.
Yes.
You have.
We have to have levy set and all of that,
We can't push it out a little bit further.
Because you can approve the budget until, I have to go get my book. You can't approve the budget until like 2 weeks after your public hearing. We are all not approving the budget until June 30th.
But if the paper, the only reason, what's magical about the 17th is what?
That's my deadline to get it in, so that they can get it, so that they can do their magic and get it out in the paper the next week. Because we have to advertise for 2 weeks
Before a public hearing.
before a public hearing.
I got it. But would it be possible, is there any way they could do it if we gave it to them on the 19th? I mean, could they work with us a little bit to give us a little
I
flexibility?
could talk with Shannon or Mara and see if she can hold me a spot.
We don't want to do it on 19th, that's meet and greet. But maybe we should do it that day, that'd be
So
good. Are you out all week, Brandon? That
but
week?
I don't get back till the 17th.
Those 12 was meet and greet.
19th.
It's 19, not the 12.
We can do a rehearsal if you want.
I've got to put down the right date.
If they could give us some flexibility to get it to them on the 19th, and then we meet on the 18th, so Brandon's back.
Okay.
And maybe that works well for Tracy too, I don't know.
We could also meet next week. Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could do any day next
But
week.
I mean, just so I'm clear, once you publish it in the papers, the county budget, it can't change by more than $300,000.
1%.
Which is,
And we don't have to have the levy set by
Yeah, we are advertising the levy at that
then.
time.
Then we for sure have to meet.
we're advertising every levy, every tax we do. And that part can change, but you can change the budget 300,000.
Trust your calendar, but can you meet next week?
Steve.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Me? I don't know what I'm
Go
doing.
get your calendar.
Might be when we go.
What date are
thought
you
this was on
looking
today.
at? I mean, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then you got your regular meeting on Thursday.
What about after the regular meeting? How heavy is the regular meeting?
It's heavy. You do not wanna do
Okay.
that.
Thursday will be full.
10th?
Wednesday's the 10th.
Being Hamilton, Dr. Holmes. Till.
I just give you plenty of time, so if it's just an hour, that's okay.
In Hamilton,
Yeah,
the 10th, what's this one?
I don't know.
Friends of
Park Retreat.
Southwest Virginia Appalachian Regional Commission. What's that?
Huh?
Friends of Southwest Virginia Appalachian Regional Commission.
Is that on the night?
That's at 5:30.
That's at 5:30.
5:30, I think.
Oh, yeah. So I won't get out until probably 8:39. Unless I cancel that.
Could we have
I
it
don't
during the
know
day
what
on, on Friday?
That's not showing on my calendar.
Oh.
Could we walk by?
What about during the day on Friday,
Works.
Friday what?
the 12th?
12.
I got it. 10 o'clock. You were Valley Regional Jail late.
I can do Friday afternoon.
About 3 o'clock.
Friday the what?
The 12th.
Does it work for everyone?
And what time? 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock?
Cool.
So 3 p.m. on 12 work session.
So fully understanding that my personal goal is to keep this here till 6 o'clock. What concerns me about this is that in the capital improvement piece, as we've discussed, we've got a lot of money that we're spending that using ARPA money on that we're really gonna need to capitalize in the out years, right?
Yes, sir.
And we also, and so I'm concerned that we didn't fund, or maybe we did, depending on what we do on this 2.26. But the EDA, capital improvement, the stuff, the investments that you said that weren't part of that budget, that concerns me for this coming year. And then the out years concern me with the big capital outlays that we know we need to do on a routine basis that we're using other people's money for right now. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I'm looking to Steve.
You concerned about the decisions you've already made?
No, not the decisions.
Oh.
It's that, but we are buying things that we're buying depreciating assets with ARPA money that we know we're gonna have to replace with county money
Yes,
in the out years.
yes.
And that worries me going forward as we think about it. And the other piece was, depending on what comes out after y'all re-scrub today, that the investments in things for the county, part of it's capital improvement, part of it's economic development, that worries me that we're playing a shell game that may bias. I think that's your point early on.
That's exactly right.
And so, after having gone through this, that's just kind of my worry. I think we're doing a good investment with the ARPA money that we have, and we're putting in things, especially the communication 911 stuff that's going to last for a long time. But I do worry that the depreciating assets that we're investing other people's money in we need to really think about that going forward. How we're going to fund it is what I'm saying, because we know we ain't a garbage truck almost every year.
And that's an addition of another $350,000 into the operating budget the following year.
Correct.
FY 24-5.
Correct. So, And I'm comfortable kind of where we're headed for the first of this year. I'm really worried about 2025, 26.
Is it in the budget, the real things that we invest in? Chamber of Commerce,
Community support.
community support, so,
Would you like to see it?
if it's all in there.
It's all in there.
So we supported what basically they asked for. Is
Yes, there were a
Would you
few
mind pulling it
things
up?
that we did not.
Yeah, we covered, well, hey, listen, I don't know if we scrubbed everything at this point. We certainly pulled it up. so
Yeah, just throw it up there, just so.
I don't know if we scrubbed everything at this point. I had some questions. Huh?
I have to think about where this is. Bear with me. Oops. Sorry, I'm not used to this mouse. So we have brain injury services. Are these the items that you were talking about, Mr. Milton? Mount Rogers Community Improvement Club, Feeding Southwest Virginia, Cox Chapel Community Club, One-on-One Literacy Program, Push Ministries, Grayson County Historical Society, Fairview Ruritan Club, Grayson County Emergency Relief Fund, the Free Clinic of the Twin Counties. This was William King Arts Center. Yes, Museum of the Arts. I couldn't remember what the M stood for. Thank you.
We're not doing anything.
Okay. Chestnut Creek School of the Arts. There is some revenue offset for that. Goodwill Grange, the Arts Council of the Twin Counties, again, some revenue offset for there. Hands of Grace Food Bank. Put in a little bit of contingency because there's requests that come in throughout the year that isn't budgeted for. Grayson County Land Care and Twin County Regional Chamber of Commerce. Those are the community support items that were requested.
What did you scrub out?
The William King so far.
Well, I think the request came in much higher. Some of them.
Yes.
Some of them. Yeah, and I think there's a couple others that
Fairview Ruritan took me 15 or 16,000.
Yes, it did.
This is the first year that they've asked. Did the Freeze Community Center?
No, I do not have a request from Freeze.
What about the Feed Independence, the other food bank?
That is part of Grayson Land Care.
Okay. Mike, that is one that, sorry, Mr. Chairman, that is one that we fund. Yeah. It's every year by. It's long standing. Yeah, you might want to check on. I talked to the mayor, they said that they did.
what have we funded that in the past?
We
Yeah.
have funded,
About
let me make sure it's not
10,000 every
somewhere
year.
else.
Huh?
Let me make sure that it's not somewhere else.
I thought it was 13,000. Is it in the,
It used to be in transfers, but it shouldn't be there.
is it in
Could be.
the rec park?
No.
Budget?
No.
No.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I just locked it up.
Let me think about that.
No, I don't have have a request. So I will look for that, Mr. Chair. I will look to make sure I didn't miss it, but I do not have it included.
There's community center, yeah.
That will need to be moved though into community support, not in where it has been traditionally.
Can you put a placeholder there?
I can.
But I think traditionally Mitch mentioned 13, my recollection was about 10K, but, can you just put it in there? And
Sure.
see what- I know that when they were doing the reciting and all that, that was. Is that you okay with that number?
I was
For a
thinking it was
placeholder?
I was thinking it was 15, but that's fine.
That's fine.
I think it was 15 as well.
Okay, so that's 15.
Yeah, let's do that.
It was 10 for a while, and then I think it went up to 13.
Yeah, maybe this,
That number to 15.
When does the 6-year road meeting happen?
Thursday.
No.
You need to resend that list.
No, I just didn't know when the meeting was.
Refresh your memory, you've got 1.5 miles, and you all have to come to agreement on where you're gonna spend that money. And I think
And that,
Mr. Porter sent you the,
and that has to come from the roads that are already on the list.
doesn't have to.
those are the ones they recommend. That's
Well,
the
it
ones
should. That's like having a capital improvement plan to give to the schools.
But
Well-
there have been years where the supervisor came up with one that there was good cost to add that road. And they did the analysis and then figured, well, rest we can make that.
So we can add roads to that 6-year list without spending any money.
They generally add roads, but it commits the money. So what had happened a long time ago was that they would add a bunch of roads to the list, but they were unfunded. And that's where people got to thinking that their road was on the list, but in fact, it didn't have any resources associated with it. So what we do now is we look at it and we try to figure out, typically we divide it between the 4 districts and we say everybody gets a little piece, but a couple years ago, we talked about Hines Branch. Part of that's done, but not the rest, but that would have taken up a big chunk of it. So there's also the option of just solve one road, at one time. The question I have for Andy will be, okay, last year, we committed all the money to cover the cost. Huh?
Inflation.
Right.
Prices.
But so are we now really talking about a 5-year plan, or are we really talking about this money, we're gonna have a gap year at year 5 because there's no money there, because we moved it all forward to pay for inflation? You know what I mean? So what's the deal? Are we really talking about a 5-year plan, or are we talking about it's a 6-year with a gap year? I don't know. I think we need to understand that, because I'm sure we don't have an answer on the chart when he shows it up there.
I think you're right. I think it'd be a gap here because you didn't have any projects.
Right, we moved all that money up.
You just moved that money to
Correct.
keep this plan.
Right.
I think you're gonna have a gap here. That's a good point.
So anyway.
Since we talked a little bit about the airport, is that,
Let me just say, I've been marinating on this. You're asking me what I would do, or you asking me what I think about that at this point, or what we're required to. So here, look, the airport, we funded it. Currently, it's sitting at $75,000. The request came in at 80 something. Is that what it is?
That's the question.
Are you sure?
Yes, sir.
I thought they asked for a bump up because they were trying to build a new building.
They are.
They did. We were looking up at it a minute ago, it's 56. Last year, 76, this year.
So we have we have one requirement, and that is, we've agreed to pay back the loan. This is the tune of about $1,000. So that's what the 20 county has agreed to pay. That's the only document that I found at this point that says we will do these things to pay off the loan. The rest of it will be, in my brain, is above, almost like above and beyond. So just keep asking the question, what's the value for Grayson on this? Are you going to it?
Yes, I'm going to it.
And then what's the value for 20 counties on this?
So operating expenses are at 56.
What's the total? Just give me the total number.
76,520.
Last year we budgeted 76,000, year before 53. This year again, 76,000. Is that what the request came in?
Yes, sir. That is a request.
Sure. Okay, I thought it was more. I thought it was 85.
I'll go get the
Okay,
paperwork.
so, it's a hard argument for me to make, what life looks like over there. Well, Mitch is giving me the business on this. I think that, is there some value to the county? I don't know if I can quantify that. Are you telling me that it's nice to have a regional airport for executives to fly into? So if they want to visit, Wildwood, maybe. Have they used that? I don't know the answer to that.
They can't.
You can fly. What do you mean?
Runway's not long enough to take in private jets. We had the company come in here, they had to go to rural retreat, I think.
So if they want to, you got a King Air or something like that, you certainly can fly around on time.
That's why we're
But I don't think we should be spending the money instead of running and flying here or his representative flying here. So then how do you quantify the value of that? I don't have this information that I can go ahead. I can tell you that I looked at Carroll County's budget last year and we spent more than Carroll County did. Air Force in Carroll County. I don't know that we should do that. They've upped their budget. I looked at their 23 budget. So they're adding additional money on their 24 to help them build buildings. Build hangars, T-hangars, or whatever they'll build there. I was there on Friday, but I had to leave a little early because I was busted up. Anyway, it's a long story. But so, have I made a recommendation of what I think we should fund that at? I don't know what that is. I want to be a good regional partner, but also want to be smart with Grayson County tax dollars. What is that number? It could be as low as 20. But I certainly wouldn't go above and beyond what we funded last year. Do I think there's a sweet spot in there? Maybe I do. I'm just not exactly sure what it is, but maybe you can think about that. That's the only other play. Only other point I can make.
Mr. Warrior, I have their request.
Yep.
Their operating budget is at 36,600.
Yep.
Their loan servicing is at 19,960.
Yeah. What's
And
that?
then the site development is 20,000.
They'll take a stand down at runway or site development.
Site development.
For hangars.
Yeah, so that's build hangers, so you potentially get bigger.
4 small box hangars.
Yeah.
Well, they need a 75-foot runway to be able to have a jet take off with full tank of gas.
Sure.
And that's the thing that they've always been trying to get, right? But in order to get the study done, they have to meet a threshold of 250 takeoff and land.
Which they're not going to do.
Right, and my point to them was, this is years ago, come up with a plan to meet your threshold so you can justify the study.
Yeah.
But I don't see that they're making strides towards solving the problem that they know they have. And so I can't see continuing to support at the level that we're supporting until they show how they're gonna show us a plan of how you're gonna achieve what it is you say is important.
Yeah.
Right now, it's hard to justify. Now, I don't know if you need to cut them by, over 50% one
No,
year,
but
but
I saw the 56 number, I think is a reasonable number to go at with that. I think the 20 to pay the loans back, which we've agreed to already, and the 36 we're operating costs, that's a reasonable number to probably go ahead. If we see some type of plan of action or something else, that's probably where I would lean as a recommendation.
Do I need to make that change?
yeah, I mean, I think maybe a little bit lower. But if you can justify, if you feel comfortable with it, I'm okay with it.
I don't, I'm all for regional support, but I don't think we should be paying more than Carroll County.
That's what I think. I think I looked at theirs at 20. They were in the 60s. Maybe I'm wrong on my last review. Make sure I'm right. But I remember we were above them, and I thought, how do we do that? So anyway, I'll come to a reasonable number if you.
Yeah, I think you're in the right place.
Okay. Can you pull up the registrars, Stacy? I want to go with that. 'Cause that, I just saw it, it just clicked, because we had an increase in there as well too. And I don't remember if I got answers.
I did.
You did, okay.
Yes, I did.
Okay. There was some additional cost in there, I want to make sure we were.
Well, I'll just leave it generalized right now.
The top line. Yep.
It's
So
about
23
$100,000.
with the 250, and you're telling me 24, we're going to 358?
Yes,
It's 100,000 increase?
100,000 increase.
What was the rationale on that?
The number of elections is increasing, as well as the pay per officer of election.
Number of elections that are occurring.
Because we have,
There's, let me go.
Some of it in prep for presidential election in
Yes, primaries.
2024.
Mhm.
Can you see what the budget was in 19?
In 19. There has been, the state did redo. There are
One
three.
of the things they recommended was increasing the poll worker salary, money for it in order to recruit more people, and I get that piece.
What benefits went up? 65, 64, sometimes.
33 or 55.
Over the and this, I guess, happened last year, the state changed the salary for the general registrar to match that of to be the same as a treasurer. That was a significant increase. There is a revenue offset to that as well. So that's part of what you're seeing there. And then, of course, that, benefits go with that.
All right. I've never said this last. I think I asked for some type of justification on this, right? Is that
Yes.
the first one I just got you, right? Okay. All right, written description for increases in electoral board and general registrar budgets. Scheduled election for 23-24 fiscal year, November 7th. 23 general election, March 5th, 24 presidential primary election, June 18th, 24 primary election. 3 cycles. High points, significant increases. Line item, total yearly budgets requested fluctuate significantly due to the difference in the number of scheduled elections. The majority of line item increases for the upcoming fiscal year are because we are budgeting for 3 elections as opposed to 2 elections. Okay. Talking about a $100K increase there, right? Other line items increases are resulting from trickle down increase in the cost of electoral board attendance, participation in state and regional training events, GR
General registrar.
General registrar. The major increase is due to the creation of a full-time deputy registrar position as allowed in Code 24.2, states that the deputy registrar shall be trained and competent for the duties of the general registrar in the absence of the registrar. Our current situation, with only part-time personnel is not restricted. The major increase is due to the creation of a full-time deputy registrar. So that's it.
And we're required to fill the deputy position.
According to code, and if you want to read it again,
I don't know that it doesn't say that.
it's just that the deputy registrar must be able to step into the general registrar's.
You remember her saying that she's having she was having a problem with getting a part-time employee to do the duties, or to employ a part-time employee, employ a part-time employee. She was like, yeah, I can't get somebody to do what I need to do part-time. More time, more effort, more training. She's very good.
Is that a county funded position?
Yes.
The major increase in the budget is due to the creation of a full-time deputy registrar position as allowed.
And it is a county funded position. I did ask that if there's revenue offset, and it is not for the deputy.
Say that again.
There's not a revenue offset for the deputy position.
So there is a personnel increase. Yes, it's just the staff's recommendation.
She's been through 3 part-times in the last 6 months.
She's been through 3 part-time.
3 part-times in the last 6 months.
Mitchell, any thoughts on this?
I just know that she's been through a lot of part-time help, and I think she's looking to get somebody with benefits that she can keep retained.
Well, I'll give you one. I just won't give it to you right now. I'll give you a recommendation. I'll give it to you. I'm not sure. I know we got that from her. I meant to have a discussion with her. I just did not have a discussion with her about this. Okay.
Good. Chair's entertaining a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourn, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Well done, Brett.
Will time.
No, go ahead, do what you gotta do.
You want this back? Can I keep this? All right. Sorry, I really.
Try to